Wow. It's way up in the air.
Yeah, you can work it down.
A little more. Okay, that's fairly
Smoky.
good.
Republic of California.
Yeah, it's been raining over here, so we're doing much better now.
It's getting smoky though here, but it's coming from Oregon.
I have a question. How long does it have to rain every day before they take the fire danger very high sign down?
I'm thinking maybe September 1st.
Maybe when it snows 2 feet or
We'll see in a week with all the rain.
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious, man. It's like, it's wet and fire danger is very high. I don't think so. Yeah.
No, it didn't.
Hey, Wolfman,
Wolfman.
how's it going? So, since YouTube has changed everything again, can everyone please verify that the sound is doing good?
You can go ahead and close
Let's
the
see.
door.
Clearly, we're on the right camera. That's a good thing. Oh,
Quiet it down a little. You can hear us, maybe.
so let's see how we're. Notice how it takes forever to reply.
No, depends on if
So
anybody's
weird.
paying attention. Is anybody paying attention?
Okay,
Thanks, David.
I presume means good quality audio there. Oh my goodness. Yep. William. Okay,
Hello,
William. Oh, so what do we got? 7 people here. Well, let's see. Start out with the the electrolytic experiments are going much better. We're actually, the cathode is getting heavier over time now. That's a good thing. Unfortunately, the smelting experiments, first one, the crucible failed. The hole in the bottom was from beating the slag out so I could get to it. And for example, here is some steel wool that's still currently undigested. I just ran out of time. That was Thursday afternoon, and so I have to go to Glacier on Friday. So I had no time to do anything. And I did on Thursday afternoon. I set up a fresh batch in a larger electrolytic cell, recirculating and such. And so it's been, by the time I get there tomorrow, it'll be, let's see, Thursday, Friday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. 5 days it'll be recirculating. And just as handsome as ever. Well, yeah. 0 equals 0. Absolutely.
Too late.
So, and then we'll also have a 100-pound batch of ore in the cement mixer that theoretically was turning itself on and off twice a day, so that we should have some pretty good solution there for more testing. I hear it rained like hell Saturday night, so I presume the leach pad is like got lots of water in it. I'm definitely going to have to put a rain cover over that thing, because
I was worried about that.
It's just screwing up my solution strength. It's just diluting everything.
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Terry. Yeah, Eva's over there. She's kind of worn out from the trip.
Everybody.
And she had a good trip up at Glacier. Truck worked fine the whole time. And when we got there, we find something very unusual, is that it said something about reservations needed to enter the park. It's like, okay, well, that's something I've never heard of before. And apparently they've been so busy this summer. And of course, David says Crystal Eva. And the Going to the Sun Road is quite popular, quite narrow, and quite intriguing. So I can understand why they want to keep the traffic down a bit. But from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m.,
6 a.m.
6 a.m. She says 6 a.m. From 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., if you do not have a reservation, you can't even get into the park. Now, we showed up there Friday afternoon after 5, and we went in looking for a camping spot, figuring, low probability, but what the hell, we'll give it a shot. And we got to a point where, okay, we've checked the campgrounds out, and 25 miles ahead is the other side of the park. We've seen that, outside the park this side, so let's just go over the top of the hill and come on down the other side.
Well, considering that half the campgrounds are closed, they were not full, they were closed for some bizarre reason.
Probably no employees.
Could be.
Yeah. But anyhow, so we went over Logan Pass there and down the other side and wound up at St. Mary. And what I had not taken into account, we figured we'll just find any old wide spot on the road, we'll park. They said, no, this is reservation over here, so you can't do that. And rather than go back through the park, we just snuck around behind the lodge and just stealth camped. To those of you who don't know what stealth camping means, you park your car. It looks like a parked vehicle, but you're sleeping in it. And it was funny because it turns out we'd parked right next to the employee smoking area. So what was it, maybe 10, 15 minutes after we were sitting there? You were on your phone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was on her phone, which doesn't make a lot of light. None of the lights were on in the camper. And about, 5 employees, I think, I'm guessing from the number of voices, came around. They started talking their, typical stuff employees would be talking about, this, that, and the other. And hey, Anders, how are you? Anders and Susanna are calling in, little one.
Hi, Anders.
From Sweden.
Hi, Susanna.
Yep. And so we just kept our mouths shut and listened to the conversation, and then they left and, went to sleep there. Then the next day we get up, and of course we can't go back through the park because now it's between the magic hours of 6 and 5. So we went south around the park. Now, Saturday, it was Saturday during the day, it was cloudy, it was rainy and misty a little bit, mainly just intermittent rain and mist, but the clouds were pretty low, so we wouldn't have seen too much anyhow.
Right.
Anyhow, we went around the park and got back to West Glacier area and tried to get in and see, can we get a permit or anything? And there we ran into, finally, a helpful employee who said, okay, here's the plan. Come back here at 5:05, go to the Afgar campground, which is the first one there, and get a space, because first come, first serve, and it usually doesn't fill up to 7 or 7:30. Once you've got your space, then you can get the permit to be here during the day. Hey, Terry. And so that was the evil plan, and it worked exactly as he suggested. So we came back at 5:05. I did a little fishing until then, killed 2 or 3 hours. We just went to the Flathead River there, and was using night crawlers. Got a northern pike minnow and a golden sucker, which looks a lot like a carp, but with smaller scales. So then we went in, got our camping spot, and very, very calm at the lake that evening. Very, just mirror surface sort of thing. Even I went down to the beach there. Hey, Trevor, how's it going? And Eva was looking at the rocks there, and we were skipping a few stones and such. Then next morning we headed back up the Going to the Sun Road. Only this time we had a permit, and it was during the day, so we were stopping and looking at things and just taking our time. And I must admit the second time wasn't as traumatic as the first time. Now, I don't know how many of you folks have been on the Going to the Sun Road. I will have a video up, in a day or two. But it was built probably back in the WPA days, back in the Great Depression. And it seems to me that the primary methodology of building the road was you shave off just enough rock to barely allow you to clear the cliff and build a wall with the pieces on the downhill side. So you get a road that was comfortably drivable by, like a Model A. And I swear there are places where the lane is like 10 feet wide. Well, David, you'll see an interesting video. First of all, the trip up and back was very nice too. I mean, this place has so much grazing and cows and stuff. And when they call it Big Sky Country, there's a reason for that. By the way, are those plains where all that grass, did that used to be forests and they logged that off?
Some of it. Some of those, there might be some areas that were parks, meadows. Because historically, the Indians burned off some timber too.
Oh, okay.
Just for elk grazing or what, for the wildlife.
Yeah.
So some of those meadows were natural meadows, and they've been probably turned into hay fields as the
because there's areas there was just miles wide of good rich hay.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But
it's pretty country.
Yeah. But anyhow, this Going to the Sun Road, there's about a 6-mile stretch from the Loop to Logan Pass where if you're going uphill, there's a drop on your right side that goes who knows how far. You can see 2,000 feet below you. I'm sure that if you were ever to go over the side, the truck would keep going for a long, long time. And then say the lanes narrow down sometimes as little as 10 feet. Usually it's about 11, maybe 12. The downhill side is better because it's much less consistent. And so that means there's a lot of times you have a little more width.
Yeah.
It narrows up that. Nobody seemed to be in a big hurry on this road. I will say that. You didn't have people zipping their little sports cars down or anything like that. Everyone's going, ee. And so as they climbing up the road was interesting. It's a little bit nerve-wracking when you're driving an old Chevy pickup truck that's, that wide and, it's 4x4, so you're up a little bit. Yeah. When you see the video, let me know, David. I know there's someplace just south of Lake Tahoe where I was coming in on the south side. It wasn't nearly as bad as this, but there was a road that went somewhere yonder through the Sierras, and there's a big sign. It says no trucks, no trailers, nothing over this big blah, 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 24% grade ahead. And I'm like, holy crap, that's 1 in 4.
Yeah.
24 feet and 100. Crap, that's like the side of a retention pond. But anyhow, I always wanted to go there just to see what it looked like, but never had the time to just, let me see what that is 6 miles down the road. But anyhow, very, very beautiful, although the clouds were so low that we couldn't even see the tops of the mountains in most cases. But being from Arizona, I like clouds. I like rain and mist and cool and stuff. It's really quite, entertaining. So we had a good time on Saturday when we got to the top of Sunday. When we got to the top of Logan Pass, the wind was clipping along at, 20, gusting to 30, something like that. And the parking lot was completely full. There's no place to park. Luckily, we have a bathroom we bring with us. So we just went down a little bit further on the other side, pulled over in one of the pullouts there, and did what needed to be done and had lunch, and then went a little further and came back up. But it's a very pretty park. And I imagine if it was clear skies, you'd have some really, awesome vistas of the mountains. As it was really cool, but it's a totally different atmosphere when it's, cloaked in mists and rain and such. But it was really cool. So we had a good time, and the weather was moderate in terms of temperature. It was cool during the day, not frigid at night. We were sleeping under one comforter, without a problem. So as we did this weekend, meanwhile, out at the ranch, I've got an electrolytic cell that's been running for, by the time I get to it tomorrow, what is it, 4 days, 5 days?
Yeah, I think it'll be 5.
I think it was 5 days by the time I get back to it tomorrow. So the 6 liters of solution it was working on should be pretty well stripped. I'm finally getting, cathodes heavier after I plate them than they were before. So I'm getting in the ballpark of it should be starting to work now. And let's say I took solution sample before, I'll take one after. I'll be smelting down the steel wool and seeing what I get, and that can be analyzed too. But I say this was really annoying Thursday because I was hoping to get a button before we took off to Glacier, but no such luck. Anyhow, working on it. And
Everything has a learning curve.
Yeah, mine's usually like a bit of a cliff.
Well, with our copper project, we're in negotiations with the mining company, so that's a good thing. And we're, hopefully we can work through a contract here and get them going.
Yeah.
So it's been a good week that way. I've been on the phone a lot with information and back and forth with their land people and their geologist and then the head of the company. So it's been a good week. We'll see.
And Eva goes to the specialist on Thursday.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have more detailed news by next week's live stream as to what the plan is. And sorry I don't have a whole lot of mining news for you all, but I ran into a bit of a brick wall. But I should be in good shape next week. I've got several options. I've got a lot of stuff on video, but without having any answers, it doesn't seem very useful to just make a whole bunch of video of, well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't work. I mean, probably more interested in what does work.
All right.
So anyhow, anyone have any questions at this point? Oh,
bring it on.
6:14. We already ran out of yak. Oh my God, we're all doomed. By the way, I'm not sure. I haven't seen Chris log on. I know that the Caldor fire was not too far south of his place. So I don't know what his situation is.
Probably not good.
Yeah, he said there's this really rough terrain between the fire and his place, and therefore it would take a pretty good effort for it to get through. But he was, the winds weren't extremely adverse or anything. What's going on here?
I know. We got lucky. We had quite a bit of rain now the last 5 days. So
let's see how
I
Chris
think our
doing.
fire season for this area is over.
I think so. It's been raining pretty good. Got some good rain last week. Hey, Chris. I'm doing okay. How's your situation over there? So still well away from you? Okay. You take care. Bye-bye. Okay, apparently he's safe and healthy over there, and it's still hasn't threatened his stuff. He says he's on the the live stream now. So anyhow, yeah, Chris was not exactly danger close, but nervously close to that Caldor fire. And yeah, up here, I don't think we're going to have much trouble at all.
This area, I think we're in pretty good shape after the last few days.
Yeah, it's gotten soaked twice in the last, 2-3 weeks?
Yep.
Yeah.
We're just glad to know you're okay, Chris.
Yeah,
That's
glad to know you're safe. As you can see, we're all back and safe. Eva's resting up over there. And she's not planning on doing a tinfoil hat report tonight because she's just been a lot of times out of communication. You know, in the national parks there, they don't put up a lot of those cell phone towers. I don't know why, but yeah, they seem to be of the opinion that technology is a bad thing or something.
Don't lay on your phone.
It was interesting looking at the license plates in the park. What would you say, over half of them Montana, little one?
Yep.
Yeah,
Really?
And California, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Virginia, Florida, Maine.
Yeah.
Oh, and we saw a lot of people with like Black Lives Matter and Biden
A lot?
stickers here and there. I saw several Black Lives Matter on,
Really?
on the roads and quite a few Biden stickers.
Yeah.
Man,
Kind of scary stuff.
They haven't tore those off yet.
just wait. We saw also, forget what the name of that town is there. It's just outside of, it's south from Columbia Falls. And I mean, there's some guy has a Calvary, you know, he's got 3 crosses and stuff. They're religious up there. You know, this is Christian country up here, and Trump flags and American flag, lots of American flags flying hither and thither.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So, as I say, it's interesting. Okay, so Chris is going to be working on some stuff too, on the electrolytic stuff. I'm suspicious that our problem is the ion density of the solution is so low, the direct electrowinning is going to be quite challenging. And we shall see how it works out, folks. We may have to go to a resin absorption desorption circuit or not. But the current flow is really low I got to push it up to 2.2 volts just to get any measurable current flow. And current flow is kind of directly proportional to how much metal you're plating out. So we shall see, hopefully by next week, I'll have some quantitative stuff. I can say, okay, this much electrode area at this voltage gets this much gold with this many liters per minute of solution flowing through it. You know? That would be blue. Volca Bear wants to know, how did the Fruit of the Looms hold up?
They're holding up so far. I am not holding out hope until they pass the 3-month mark.
Okay, Volca Bear.
But y'all need to talk to Bear about his temper.
Well, little one, I told you, let's wait till we get back and I can look it up on the computer, and you wouldn't stop. Now, you were right. I will agree. But nevertheless, it was a map thing. Swan Lake and Flathead Lake. I mean, I can't even see Swan Lake on the map. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're driving by that lake there?
Sealy and Swan. And
Well, she said, no, that's Swan Lake. And I said, no, it's Flathead Lake. That's a big lake, you know?
It's the inland ocean.
This is right after we had passed a sign that said Swan Lake.
Yeah, well, I'm watching the road. And there was a town called Swan Lake. It's like, okay, town called Swan Lake, sign says Swan Lake. That's fine. So anyhow, we had a disagreement. I will not dispute that I was thing. Chris can tell you, when I think I'm right, I tend to get, dig in. And Eva was like, no, she was right. And she was digging in too, which is fine. I mean, she should if she thinks she's right.
And I showed him the paper map, and I showed him the map on the phone.
No, you didn't show me the map on the phone at that time. You showed me that down at Route 283, whatever the heck that little cross.
Clearwater Junction.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be Clearwater Junction there. I don't know, but I can get there easily on one tank of gas. I've still got 6-7 gallons in that one tank with a full 18-gallon reserve tank. So, and then from there I can make it up to the Big Fork area where there's all kinds of gas stations there. So that's not a problem. But anyhow, so I say we were having a discussion, and I'm like, no, look at you can't even see that little. Like, apparently the scale is pretty big here in Montana. When you have a Montana map only 2 pages wide, Big Lake is like that big. But anyhow, so I said, well, let's just wait till we get back there. And she didn't want to let it go. So, these things happen. Well, Chris is on your side.
Well, actually, I did let it go. I suggested twice that we let it go, and you said, no, we're going to finish it now.
No.
And you pulled over.
No, because you said, okay, we recall things differently. To me, it was like, let's let it go. And then she opens her mouth again. These things happen, Hey, Lito, how's it going? So anyhow, I will stand on my soapbox if I think I'm right. Chris will tell you. Chris, I can be obnoxious, can't I? Sometimes Chris and I will get in a discussion, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. With Coke, you're gonna be hauling golf carts.
Coke Industries or something.
Wow. So anyhow, she was right. I was surprised how warm the water was at Lake McDonald. I expected it to be like icy, and it wasn't. I touched it, and it's like, it's actually quite pleasant.
Huh.
It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold. It was probably 65, 70 degrees, which is pretty warm. Yep.
Yeah. I suppose they've had a lot of heat up there this year, too.
Yeah. Augusta, Lito's hauling to Augusta, I guess, huh? Yeah. So anyhow, but when it comes to this electrolytic stuff, it's fairly new to me, because what we did years ago, which I'm trying to think now, let's see, 1980 compared to now, that would be 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that wasn't my job. I've been around several smelts, and my good friend was the mill hand there. But to getting into the details of what voltages and things like that, first of all, to a certain extent, you try and keep such information relatively quiet. But being a small mine, you wear different hats and this and that and the other. You're not allowed to use live bait in the park. You're not allowed to use lead weights in the park. That's hilarious, man. There goes my go-to stuff. Nightcrawler on the bottom, man.
Well, good luck, Forrest.
Yeah, you take care. Are you going dry washing? Yeah, you're an outlaw. No, I go along to get along. You can just ask Eva, Chris.
Said yes.
Okay. Now, good luck for us. Get some big ones.
Yeah.
But so that's basically our issue with the electrowinning is trying to get enough stuff plating fast enough. And there's a variety of things like larger electrode size and tighter electrode spacing, and a few other little things we can play games with. But until we have a rough idea what it's actually doing now, well, yeah, he got booed because he said, as I understand it, he said that the vaccines are good.
That did it.
And that'll do it. People say, I'd love to see the left-wing media show that one. That would be hilarious.
They didn't even talk about him speaking.
Yeah, it would be funny. Trump got booed today because he believes in the vaccines. Oh no. Trump supporters don't support. I don't know, Lito. I'm waiting for some more information. Since I'm not in a high-risk group, I don't see why I should worry about it. Yeah, my brother got vaccinated after he got COVID and recovered. That was, he's got better immunity from getting the COVID. That's an interesting concept, but when you have large numbers of healthcare workers who aren't really that interested, it makes you wonder. That the whole thing is so new, so new in concept that people aren't comfortable yet. And I think it's risky to the system to try and mandate things like, well, all healthcare workers that, any facility that receives Medicare or Medicaid, which is basically all of them, has to have vaccine. Well, what happens if they don't want to? Because if that's, if right now the healthcare system's running pretty tight, so is the trucking industry. So the whole idea of if you haven't had a vaccine, you can't go interstate. You just don't want to knock down 10%, 20% of your personnel. I was talking to some firefighters a little while ago, and they were saying after they fight these forest fires, they may not have a job because when they go back, the jurisdiction is saying you're going to have to be vaccinated. They're like, we're not going to. Say they should have spent a lot more time convincing people by being honest and straightforward.
And the Democrats should have spent a lot less time saying before the election that nobody should trust the vaccine because Trump put it out there.
Yeah.
I mean, really now.
Trevor, I agree with the first one. I think it may have been accidental, although I can't rule out deliberately released. But the vaccine, it's an experimental methodology. And that's got people nervous.
As it should.
I say so. And somebody who's in the know, I mean, Mayo trained clinical pathologists and the head immunologist of England are saying this vaccine, even if it's effective, is not going to remain effective because it only targets one protein on the virus. Now, it's a pretty key protein, but if the virus just changes that, then the vaccine becomes useless. And so it's kind of putting all your all your eggs in one basket. And their suggestion was high-risk people get the vaccine. Low-risk people just wind up getting COVID sooner or later, developing natural immunity. If you get, quite sick from the COVID, there are treatments. I see ivermectin is there. There's other things that are showing promise. But we focus on treatment medications, not vaccination. And most everybody, you either just get it and get better, or if you get seriously ill, you get treated and get your natural immunity, which is more of a broad spectrum immunity. It'll target different proteins. And that way, society as a group is much better protected. I don't know. I know that Israel, for example, is almost completely vaccinated. So we're going to find out real quickly over there what's going on.
If we ever find out.
I agree, Trevor. When the government and the media is repeatedly caught in lies, and I don't mean they're mistaken, but I mean deliberate mistruths on whatever, you can't trust them. When you can't trust them, why are you going to, I don't know, I don't like that. That doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. Why would you do it? Because the people I don't trust say trust me? It's just really bad PR,
Yeah, they approved the Pfizer today.
Yeah, they approved it in record time.
Yeah.
With no long-term studies. By definition, you can't have long-term studies when it hasn't been around long-term. I don't know. Let's say I'm not giving anyone advice. That's between you and your doctor. Only you and your doctor know your medical condition. And I say I'm not planning on getting it because I don't need to, and I don't see the necessity of it. If I get COVID, I'll get vaccinated. I mean, in terms of the COVID will do it.
Naturally.
I don't trust anything at this time. I'm watching stuff going on that I never thought I would see. If you look at the chaos in Afghanistan, I think anyone with military training can point out 3 or 4 major glaring errors that anyone with any military training would have said, well, that's not a good way to do that. That's one too, but I also get really annoyed when people lie to me when they not only know they're lying to me, but they know I know they're lying to me. And that just shows a complete disrespect of me to sit there and I don't care what you think. I'm going to lie to your face, and that's it. And I don't like anyone that does that. And that is also got a very corrosive effect on the cohesion of our society, which I think is gravely dangerous. Say with the COVID, with this, with that, with the other, when you have a society that has large groups of people that believe different things and believe them fairly strongly, that's a formula for problems,
That's true. I did read that. They can pull the approval at any point that they feel there's an issue.
Yeah. What about that gold, true or false? If it real? Not sure what you're talking about, David Villa. What about that gold? I think maybe there's a typo there. I'm not sure. Well, don't let it get away. Yeah. I'd say I don't know, but I'm perfectly willing to let other people who want to find out. I figure that if some of the more substantial, let me pull that, more serious claims are true, then it should become readily apparent shortly. And so, I'll see. In the meantime, does anyone have any questions about gold mining here? And, we'll go from there. Because really for the last, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, for the last 4 days, I really haven't done any gold mining.
Yeah.
We drove up to Glacier, drove around Glacier, drove back from
Think
Glacier.
through your problems while you're driving along.
Not really.
Not really.
I was
No.
enjoying the trip.
Good.
And
Good. That's what it's
the
about.
problems were the sort of things where until I get some numbers, I
Right.
can't
You
really
keep
address
testing
it.
and retesting. And
Yeah, I mean, I know what I want to do tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens when I do it tomorrow. Then we'll go from there. What do you got for us?
Well, I
Bring
thought,
something?
well, yeah, I kind of did. I thought, you and I both could have some fun with, problems that mistakes and problems that you see on mine sites. And you can add a lot to this too.
Incomplete testing. I think the incomplete testing is one of the biggest things because most people don't test near enough, and it's a natural human emotion to I want to get making gold. I want gold. I want to see gold.
Well, you see gold, and then you quit testing.
Yeah,
because all of a sudden now we got gold.
and so you've got the not only incomplete testing in terms of how much gold is there, but this next one here, incorrect equipment. Without proper testing,
Right.
you have no idea what to get. With hard rock, I think even worse than with placer.
Yeah, even in placer, they make the mistake. A lot of guys will make the mistake of buying equipment before they know where they're actually mining.
Yeah, and
Or they get the gold fever. They find some gold. You can go down there and pan some gold or dig into the bank and you get some gold. So the next thing they're out running and getting all this equipment and all this, and they're going to go mining, and they've never tested it enough to understand what the due diligence on the site really, which kind of is, it's understanding the site. It's the incomplete testing and not identifying like your strip ratios and things. And suddenly now you got all your money invested in doing this. And now it's turning into a nightmare because you're not making enough money to get yourself out of what you just put yourself into.
well, and you're almost never gonna get the money out of the equipment that you put into it.
Well, that's true too.
And your mobilization is
But
totally
in the
gone.
minute you bring in the wrong pieces of equipment, you're kind of hanging yourself with your own rope.
Yeah,
Because now you've spent
poured
money.
yourself in concrete now.
Right. Now you've spent money to do what you want to do and bought this equipment, and now it's the wrong equipment. You need this other piece of equipment that you don't have money for.
Yeah.
And so we thought we'd just kind of go over some of the things that we see on these sites that if it's thought out and done one step at a time, you don't have these problems. And in the end, hopefully you are successful in what you're doing.
Well, and the due diligence part too. Another thing that you need to do, first of all, you can never trust the seller of a claim
No.
to give you accurate information.
Nope.
First of all, he's got a strong financial motivation to oversell. And number two, he or she may be not knowledgeable enough to
Right.
do an accurate analysis, or they may be too emotionally involved. I knew a friend, he's dead now, but I mean, he was treasure hunting all the time. And he just knew it was out there, but he could never find it.
Right.
And it's like,
It's an
Okay.
emotional involvement.
I enjoy going hiking, but I never expected to find anything.
Right.
It'd be nice if we found, 800 burro loads of silver bars, but oh well. And
Hey, Pedro.
so you need to assume that the person you're discussing, even if they sound quite logical, etc.,
You have to do your
may be
own.
mistaken or deliberately lying. Actually, the person who's tripping a little bit, I have more trust in because at least he's not deliberately lying to me in a
Right.
skillful
Right.
manner. There was a guy I was talking to this weekend that was talking about, I had a friend, he kept, when he would get some gold, he'd melt it, pour it onto a gold bar. And And he had a bar. It was 18 inches long and 6 inches thick and about this wide. And he got over $50,000 for it. And I'm like, gosh, I would hope so. Because I didn't say anything, of course, because it would be rude. But I mean, a bar that big is going to weigh, what, 200 pounds, 300 pounds?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty damn heavy.
Yeah, you're pretty much going to stop pouring after a while and start a new bar.
When you get into pounds, it's a little different.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be like millions of dollars. So people tend to fudge things. They get excited. They tell stories.
Yeah, buying a claim is not for the inexperienced.
Yeah,
and I mean, we were just out looking at some ground that my partner bought and did a lot of historical background on it. We asked DEQ for records because they had done a cleanup way up the one end of it years ago on an old mill site. And when they do mill sites, a lot of times they'll go down drainage and drill holes because they want to know what the natural balance right now is. So when they change something, they can go back and analyze water and things like that. They have to have a baseline. So here they had all these really cool drill records that showed all this gold in the drainage down below that was never mined.
Sweet.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, that was a source I never thought that was going to say, oh, look at these drill records. They're really good, But you keep asking questions and you learn everything you can possibly learn about the area you're working in. And then you go out and you learn some more by digging holes and trying to figure out what is this, doing assays like in hard rock. It takes a lot of assays before you decide that even at a small scale, you want to have that baseline information that can say, if we get a jaw crusher and an impact mill and a table, we can do this.
Well, as you're saying with placer, there's obviously some differences too. But if you've got placer gold, to a great extent, it can be recovered using gravity techniques. You may want to use a different, but you can pretty much say, gravity will work on this. May have to be careful what I get.
May tune it. Yep.
With the hard rock, an assay doesn't tell you but a fraction of it. Right. It just tells you how much gold, assuming it's a good assay lab.
Right.
It doesn't tell you
how you're going to get
in
it
what
out,
form or how the hell you're going to get it out.
Exactly. But that's why, true gold stream. I mean, we're all learning. I mean, every site you're on and every time you're mining, it's a little different than the last place you were. The material's different. The particle sizes of the gold are different. You're always trying to dial in on, how I'm going to get money out of this or see if this is even going to work.
Well, and when you're dealing with a micro scale, your exploration budget is fairly limited.
Usually, yes.
Your tools are fairly limited. You don't have an XRF gun. You don't have a geophysical department that can come out there with a team and do a geophysical survey. The big boys have all these people on, retainer.
But if you can do enough due diligence on your own to say that, okay, it's worth bringing in a team now to do some geophysical. I mean, we do have a crew here that's here out of town that I can hire for about $2,500 a day if I want them to do just, one site geophysical. But it's still, it's $2,500. Well, before you pull that trigger, you want to identify targets that are worth maybe trying to, betting that money on.
Well, and also, you need to have a good idea. I mean, when they're doing a geophysical survey, they're going to come back with data on resistivity, geomagnetic field distortion, things like that. And you've got to have some kind of an idea of what that is. So if you've located an ore body or a chunk of mineralization, you say, okay, this stuff is good. Then when they do the survey over that, that'll give you some kind of an idea what you want to see somewhere else.
Right.
Because otherwise, I mean, if there's a lot of, let's say, iron, then they may go, oh, we got a geomagnetic anomaly here. Well, fine, I'm looking for copper, and the copper isn't associated with the iron in this particular ore body.
No, that's true.
Sometimes it is. Now, where I'm at, the gold is usually associated with the iron.
Mhm.
So a geomagnetic survey might work very well. It's all oxidized, so a resistivity study probably wouldn't do too much
Right.
because it's an insulator. On the other hand, if you have a lot of sulfides, your
Anomaly is
induced
gonna be
polarity
right.
is likely to work better. So, and unless you're an expert, you need to have enough information to where you can discuss it with your experts that this is
Yep.
what I'm looking for. And so they have an idea of what
Right.
techniques and what nuance, what adjustments, so to speak, to make to those techniques to try and find whatever it is you think is there.
Right.
And hopefully spot something that you didn't think was there that
right.
was still useful. I knew a guy that was, he worked for Zong Engineering, and one time they were out doing a survey, and coming up almost a month, nothing. Like the last few days, bam, they hit a small mountain of turquoise under the ground, gem grade turquoise.
Yep.
And I mean, we're talking 150, 200 feet across.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. A nice hit.
Exactly. But, you know, these are the sort of things where,
Exactly.
you know,
and
they will do whatever you tell them to do.
right.
And nothing else.
And nothing more. Yes.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yep.
You do have to put yourself in your work, and you do have to take the time to do as much yourself to identify things and get it kind of mapped in a way that now if I bring in a geologist or somebody to help me take it to the next level, I can give him that information and he can come up with that much more, that much faster.
You can use him efficiently.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the efficiency.
You can get him directed to where he's likely to get as good a results as you can get.
Right.
Now, now with mine, the studies we had Montana Tech do on that ore were very useful, even though they were very discouraging, because it's like, no, you're not going to gravity separate this ore.
Right.
You know, not only did the electron microscope study show it's just way too fine, but even when they tried to do a gravity separation on a very precise Moseley table, it didn't do worth a crap.
Right.
And so we got two different ways of confirmation. So it's like, okay, we have to change direction. And even though that was an expensive test, that was $1,000, it was well spent.
Yeah.
Because it saved us a lot of time and effort.
It answered something. You had that idea that you may not be able to separate a gravity anyway. You already had tried.
Yeah.
But it answered it gave you the answer.
Why?
Right. Yeah. Okay. We know that's not going to work now. So
Yeah.
put that up to bed.
We don't have to keep tuning this to know that it's not going to work. But yeah, and do it as cheaply as you can, and the kind of testing and stuff.
Yep.
It's better to do in general a number of small tests than one big test.
Exactly.
Because one big test can be non-representative.
Yep.
A bunch of small tests that are all consistent
Well, and
are unlikely to be unrepresented. And if they're inconsistent,
then you can ask why.
it tells you, okay, we got something
Why?
here that
What's inconsistent.
You know,
You can ask that question, why?
exactly.
And that's the thing about a placer, and I've seen it quite a few times on, the guys will dig into somewhere and they'll find gold, and the next thing they're bringing in bigger and better equipment.
Hey, Jungle Fever.
And that's all fine and dandy, but if you haven't identified what there, you could go into the ground, you move 10 more feet and not have any gold, and then what are you going to do? Now you just spent all this money to permit and get into this site, and now you're not finding any gold. And that's a lack of testing. That's all that is. They did not go in there and discriminately figure out how big is the resource and is there a season worth of mining there? I mean, ideally, if you can identify, or even a month or two worth of mining, that in the meantime, you can be testing some other ground ahead of yourself. But you have to start with a basis that justifies getting the checkbook out and spending money.
And you also have to keep double checking. We just ran into a situation, Montana B, the middle decline dump. We had two samples. One was running, as I recall, about 0.6 ounces to the ton. The other was about a tenth. looking at the lower decline dump, we figured, okay, we're going to take that 0.6, and screen it. We should be over an ounce to the ton in the screenings.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work. Okay. My assumption is at this point that the 0.6 was nugget effect.
One rock. Yeah, one.
And so that's, sampling is not perfect. You always got to keep that in your head. That number may be wrong. A whole
if you walk
bunch
out-
of numbers is unlikely to be wrong.
That's
But
the-
one number certainly can.
And that's the problem. I mean, if you can walk out to a dump and you can high grade it by looking at, oh boy, look at that. That's a beautiful piece of ore right there.
I took half a bucket.
Well, yeah, but you can do it with one rock. You could take that and send it in for assay, and it could come back and say, it's 50 ounces per ton of gold. The problem is there's not another rock on that whole dump like that, nor is there when you get into the old mine, because that pocket is gone.
Yep.
They got that pocket. Not to say that there isn't more ground. I mean, in most cases, if there was a pocket that was that good, there's probably some more ground that is that good. But you may have to find it. You may have to drift for 100 feet in there to find it.
Yeah.
So now you're talking a lot of money to see if you can ever, or drilling or something to see if you could ever identify that.
Always double check everything before scaling up.
So that one assay comes back and says, yeah, that is that, that value, but it doesn't mean that it's a mine.
Yeah. Well,
If you can't reproduce that assay with another assay, or maybe 2 or 3 assays at some point, if you can't reproduce that number, it wasn't a good number. Yeah. There was something that affected the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Either the lab screwed up, or it's a nugget effect, or something.
Yep. And you can't do that to yourself. You can't have it can't be all happy thoughts, or you're going to end up in a problem.
And you got to throw out the ones you want, but don't seem to be accurate. Say in this case, the backup testing, where I went back up there, same spot, took basically 2 buckets of 1/2 inch minus screened material, brought it back, crushed it, split it, sent it off for assay, and it came back less than 1/3 of an ounce to the ton. And then the leaching came back with only 60% recovery on that in 24 hours. So all of these things are going, wow, that dump isn't as good as I thought it was. More emphasis, and you guys would probably like it, but we're more likely to go mining the middle decline than hauling off middle decline dump material at this point. Again, we still have other testing to do.
Yeah, there's always more testing, and you're right, Goldstream. I mean, it's not consistent usually in a placer. And ideally, if you're getting quite a bit of nugget material as well as fines, I like to take the biggest nugget out of the collection, and try to identify, if I never got that, is that other gold still good enough to mine this site? And if it is, then that nugget and stuff is all just icing on the cake. That's the good stuff. So you don't want to lie to yourself that this is really good ground. And the fact is by the time you spend the money and do all the calculations and get in there, you find out that we're losing money.
Okay, Pedro, we see a lot of something similar to gold, but when you did the gold grade test, it was almost 0. Without knowing which test, I can't tell you how reliable it is. Chalcopyrite or something with copper. Now that's the chalcopyrite's easy to determine because you just whack it with a hammer on a hard surface and it'll shatter, as opposed to squish. I'm not aware of any native copper alloys that really look yellow. Most native copper will look pretty red.
Chalcopyrite, though, can really...
Chalcopyrite,
especially if it's a lot of little tiny pieces in there. When you pan it, it looks like fine gold. But a lot of times the chalcopyrite will float fairly well, too, when you're panning down.
Yeah,
And
see it
you can
floating
tell
on the
that it's
top.
light. It won't climb. If you're tapping the top of the pan, it won't climb like gold will.
Yeah,
It won't
it's
pull.
not as dense.
Yeah, it won't pull to the vibration.
I think it's the only natural mineral I know that really looks like gold in terms of the color, but it usually looks like a brittle solid.
Right.
Usually it's got edges and
Right.
stuff instead of
Or
rounded.
little hooks, little curls to it.
Yeah.
But the other way you can tell is if you're in really bright light or good sunlight and it's shiny like gold, if you run your hand over it to shadow it, if it's chalcopyrite, it kind of will disappear in the shade, where if it's gold, it'll be just as yellow in shade as it will in the sun, actually.
To a great extent, yeah.
So the shadowing it sometimes in the pan can help just identify it quick.
Another thing that will also look yellow like that is oxidized iron pyrite. I've seen that, where if it's been out in the weathering, it'll oxidize to a much brighter yellow than the iron pyrite underneath. As soon as you start smashing it, you're seeing all this gray, green iron pyrite. And it's like, well, where did all the yellow stuff go? And I think it may just be that when you've got an iron pyrite like that, there may be some chalcopyrite in it and the iron pyrite disappears. I don't know what it is, but it is a surface effect I've seen more than once. Yep.
Hey, smoking.
Was that metallic stuff, Chris? Because I've actually seen brass. That's what happens when you get a cartridge in your impact mill.
Little brass balls.
Oh, it looks like little nuggets.
Yeah,
it really did. And I say I was immediately suspicious just because of the sheer volume that I saw.
That's true, Goldstream.
Not necessarily, Muhammad. If you really know what you're looking at, usually, but not, to the novice, it's a lot harder. The stuff that I hit, is a guy, we saw bullets. I mean, people love to shoot into dumps for some reason. So we saw some bullets, and we knew the lead and the copper was, from bullets. But then we did one, and I panned that sample, and there was just all this bright yellow stuff in there. And I'm going, okay, that looks interesting. Look at it under the loop. Looks malleable. Put it on one of the larger chunks on an anvil. Hit it with a hammer. Yeah, it's malleable. It's not breaking up.
But
then put a little nitric acid on it, and it goes away.
It was gone.
What was it, Chris? If it wasn't, gold, what the heck could it have been? Was it natural or not? Because you also have to consider you may be looking at something that's not natural. It's not a mineral. It's a fabricated artifact that's been torn to pieces by weathering or this or that or the other.
It was surprising sometimes panning, especially the concentrates from the
Take care, Jake.
The big wash.
Everything going okay? Nevada desert dump. Sure it wasn't brass? Yeah, Badradine, brass does have a lower density than gold, but it's higher than just about any natural mineral.
Most of your imitations too that you would think are gold, if you sit there and wash them back in that pan, gold, the density of the gold, even a tiny piece, will usually stay, or it might slide a little, but it'll usually hang up enough in the pan that you can say, no, that's heavy.
So it appeared to be natural, as it was in rock matrix, but yet you're sure it wasn't gold? Silver copper alloy?
Could be.
Possibly. I mean, nature does some weird stuff.
Yeah, that is possible, Chris.
And when in doubt, test. If you had a lot of it, well, silver copper alloy would be worth something.
Yeah.
It would also be potentially valuable as a specimen. If you actually had some significant amount of natural silver copper alloy in rock, yeah, if you could prove that, that could be some pretty valuable specimen stuff, because that's just weird. And the weirder it is, the more likely it is to be valuable. But that's another handy test, people, is nitric acid, because it'll eat up just about anything that looks like gold except gold and mica. Biotite mica, those little flakes, they're pretty resistant to nitric acid.
Yeah.
But
Pretty inert.
they're also pretty light, so they're pretty easy to see by the density.
Usually that you can wash, roll it off easy enough.
Yeah. And so, say mica may look very much like gold, but it doesn't act like gold. If you take a knife and try and scratch it, it'll just flake and chip up like that. And those chips and flakes will normally be dark in color, which, of course, if it was gold and it was layered gold and you did that, they would all be golden color.
Yeah, right. It'd still be gold.
Yeah, the Middle Fork of the Boise River, they got some biotite in those rocks in the river there. They're hydrated where it looks like gold. It's really pretty, but
It's not,
it's mica. Yep.
Yeah.
But so that's some of the tests. Say density is a good one. Malleability, if you've got a big enough piece where you can try squishing it or bending it or cutting it, that will give you a good idea. Chalcopyrite also has different crystal forms. You're not going to generally see gold in cubes or with conchoidal fracture. That's like when you break glass, how it gets that kind of curved fracture. That's called conchoidal. And gold doesn't do that. It doesn't fracture at all.
No.
So quite often you can look at it under a loop and you go, okay, that's not the kind of pattern you'll see in gold. But yeah, smashing it, take it with a pair of pliers, and yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, but most of them will just turn to powder real quick. And the ones that don't will usually dissolve in nitric pretty easy. Three-inch, huh? That's pretty good gold stream. Is that would that be valuable as a specimen? I'm not that familiar. I know mica can come in some pretty big chunks in places.
As long as it's not.
Evil would like
as
it.
long as it doesn't have a lot of asbestos in it. You don't want to be shipping it through the mail if it starts to show asbestos.
Oh no, you're so negative.
Well, it's illegal, I think.
Probably.
If you dig deep enough.
Yeah, probably against.
I had some really pretty that was kind of a green. Well, I think you even seen some that I've got a couple big chunks. Well, that doesn't. There's no. We had to test it just to see, because I thought, man, that makes it pretty specimens.
Yeah.
And I know where the deposit is, and it's full of that booked mica.
Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, that would be my guess. Mica can sometimes come in some pretty big sheets.
Yeah, big pieces.
So you got to do your recovery testing. Yeah. No site plan. Okay, now this is one thing. Another thing that I see is people just start digging.
Yep.
And what a lot of people don't realize is material you move is potential building material also.
Mm-hmm.
You can do something with that.
Yep.
And so you need to think, do I need to do something with that? Is there something useful in the case of yours, building retention ponds?
Yep.
Things like that.
Yep. You've got a road, a pad for your wash plant. There's things that if you think the site plan out, you can remove some of that material and get it out of your way and utilize it, and then be able to do the reclamation or whatever all fairly consistently without moving material all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, worst case scenarios I see in gold mines is these guys will have a plant maybe down on some private land, and they'll go up and they'll mine a big piece, and they're using haul trucks, as you guys have seen on Gold Rush and things like that. Well, in order to do the concurrent reclamation, if you're hauling it down there, sooner or later you're going to be hauling it back. So now the cost per yard that you're moving when you bring in haul trucks and start going that route could definitely affect the profitability of whether it's, if this deposit's good enough to do this.
Well, and there's another good example of where thinking ahead. Once you've processed some of that, why is the truck going uphill empty?
It shouldn't be. No, it should be dumping ore, loading tailings and hauling back, and it should be loaded both ways.
Yeah.
But that's the planning. If it's planned correctly, everything fits together and works together.
Yeah.
It's when you start doing things like that, only hauling one way, and pretty soon they're saying, hey, what are you going to do with that rock pile? And it's like, well, I guess we got to haul it back up.
Try and avoid doing one thing at a time.
Right.
If you can make something like a
Correct.
haul,
Yep.
if you can make it do two things at once,
Yep.
that makes it very efficient. And another question is, do we need to do this at all?
Well, that's a big one. If the
your
economics,
process.
if the economic viability for yardage and stuff isn't correct, it may be a site that you need to just say, wait a minute, let's see if we can go find a better mining site or another drainage.
That's not what I was talking about. I was talking about you've got an unnecessarily complicated process. Is there a step you can eliminate?
Yep.
A lot of times conveyors can be got rid of if you just build your plant at different levels.
Correct.
Let gravity
You
do
your work.
Have you never noticed how every mill you've ever seen is built in steps?
Yep. And that was because of gravity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because gravity works. It's free.
Yep.
It's highly reliable.
Yep.
It rarely ever fails.
Right. You don't have the energy input that you do when you start running elevators or another machine, a payloader. You can get, if you can eliminate a step, definitely.
Yeah. And so always look at your system with the idea is, does that do anything important? Is it doing enough important to pay for itself?
Is it the right thing
or
to
can
do
we
for
get
that?
rid of it and actually save money? A good example outside the money, this new SpaceX rocket they're launching, the big heavy booster, the grid fins do not fold down because they found that the fuel required to lift the folding mechanism,
The weight.
was more fuel than it takes to just push the grid fins through the lower atmosphere at the low velocities. This is getting fat. So they completely eliminated those mechanisms,
all that mechanical.
and it doesn't cost them a bit in fuel.
Right.
And this is the kind of thought process. Look at your system and say, can I combine steps? I'm screening it coarse and then I'm screening it fine. Well, can you put a double deck screen there?
Right. Do it once.
Can you do
handle
it all with
handle
one
it once?
mechanism?
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, your on-site processes, you want to get it in line to where you're handle the least amount of material for the best recovery, and the limiting those moves of that material as much as possible, because it may not sound like much at $1 a yard, but if you suddenly move 20,000 yards or 30,000 or 100,000 yards, if you could have saved that $1, that's $100,000 maybe that you would have saved by not doing that.
Yep. And another thing is evaluate how mobile your equipment is. How easy is it to move around?
Right. Site move.
Especially with the micro mining stuff, you rarely wear out the equipment on one job. You're almost always going to move it to another job or sell it.
Well, and if you're testing multiple mines like we have, being mobile is a plus.
Yeah, highly mobile.
Highly mobile is a plus. So by investing in that equipment, it's not necessarily for one mine, it's for multiple mines and looking.
A post hole digger will allow you to get
some depth.
about a meter deep, but you're also probably going to need a digging bar.
Yep, because of rocks.
Yeah, because you need to soften it up. A digging bar is just a big, heavy steel bar about 6-7 feet long with a point on one end and a chisel on the other that you can drive in and loosen stuff up. They work quite effectively. And yeah, you can dig a post hole a lot easier than a dog hole, a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, Bryce, yes and no. If you can plan it so that you're doing concurrent reclamation where you're literally pushing your waste material into the last holes you dug or something, so you try to limit it. I mean, you're in some cases you're right, and especially in a tight drainage like you're working, it becomes a problem at a certain point of how you're better off to wait and do the reclamation later with a big dozer. Move as much around as you can after the fact. But
yeah, Mohammed, a crowbar, as we call it, is a different device. It's got a hook on one end and a little bit of a bend on the other, and it's used for prying stuff or for pulling out big nails. A digging bar has no curve to it. It goes straight to a chisel point on one end and straight to a point on the other. And if you're going through tree roots, I guarantee you, sharpen that chisel point regularly. It'll make life a lot easier. A digging bar that's got a sharpened chisel on it will chop tree roots pretty darned effectively. But if it's not, it'll just bounce off. A lot of waste of energy.
It depends on the ground you're in too. I mean, even the guys are mentioning auger and stuff too, and that can work. But if you get into some cobble, that are bigger rocks even, and that's probably where your gold is going to be, somewhere in there below it. A post hole digger might really limit you as to if you can get past those rocks.
Yeah. I was actually doing some fencing a couple of years ago with Ken up in New York. And if you didn't have too big of rocks, the post hole digger, the powered post hole digger, was by far the fastest way to get those holes in the ground. And if you have big rocks, sometimes if it's just the occasional big rock, then you can run your auger down and then pry out a couple big rocks, but you're kind of limited in that case to how deep you can get your arm to pull out the big rocks if they're that big. But yeah, if it's just gravel, little cobbles like this, post hole digger will usually work pretty well. Post hole auger.
Well, Goldstream, you're right. As far as auger,
go get a couple and just show you. But as long as you're clear, that'll be fine. If not, let me know, and I can go down the truck. I got both.
But as far as the testing ability of an auger can give you, I was saying, a smear effect, and you can get contamination. So it's not the most effective testing means. It can tell you depth to bedrock or depth to hard pan, and as you're digging, and it can also tell you if there's gold there, which is, that's huge in itself, because if at the point you can say, yeah, there's gold down there, then it might be worth, a small backhoe or some other form, get some guys to dig an actual pit, shaft it in.
Yeah, Mohammed, if you have laws that prohibit mechanized digging tools, then a digging bar and a post hole digger,
it's good. It's a starting point.
Is a good way.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, once you've made a post hole sized hole, it's usually a lot easier to cave the sides in as you go down with the digging bar and then drag it up than it would have been to go down with a shovel.
Yep.
Absolutely. And the other thing with my digging, when I'm using a digging bar, if the soil is soft enough, I never lay it down. I just stick it, because leaning over to pick up a heavy digging bar. It's just extra work. It's a lot easier to go
stick
chink.
it in the ground. Yeah, stick it next to you in the
You know,
ground.
same thing with the postal digger. Chink, chink.
Yeah, and then stick it
in the pile.
Yeah, the soft pile.
Chink, wang, wang, wang. Absolutely. Try, efficiency. This is all about efficiency too, and efficiency in everything you do. It becomes a habit. You're always thinking, can I do this easier? Can I do this faster with the same effort? Can I do it cheaper? And those are the kind of questions that it's good to be in a habit of doing. It's like, how can I do this more efficiently?
Yeah, we had a little blip here for a moment on the screen, but I think everything's good.
Yeah. You have to be careful, but yeah, as I start mining again, I'll be showing again how you break rock efficiently with a demolition hammer and stuff too. There's ways to do it and ways not to do it. I was helping to replace a sidewalk a month or two ago, and there were guys out there with a electric demolition hammer breaking the sidewalk up, and I said, watch this. Once you got both ends of the bad section loose, just go under there with a digging bar, pick it up in the air, whack it with a sledgehammer, and it breaks up in nice big chunks. Piece of cake. Are we blurry right now? We're not blurry on our display. But does everyone else see us blurry or not blurry? What's going on? Mr. Virtue says it's blurry where he's at. Is it blurry or is it kind of locking and stuff? Mohammed, you're not supposed to do bear. Okay, David says fuzzy.
Fuzzy, huh?
Mr. Virtue says it's fuzzy.
I seen we had a little blip on the power there a minute ago, so
I don't know.
Good there. Alan says it's good.
So it's apparently a system issue, not an us issue.
Hopefully it's YouTube, not us.
So some people are saying,
yeah,
it's all good now.
All right.
Might need to clean his glasses. Clear to me.
Might be the beer.
Focus could be sharpened. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to focus on the...
Nope.
That's the wrong way.
It tipped a little bit.
That's about it right there.
Pretty sharp. I don't know.
Yeah. Not perfect.
But like Keith said, all of this is about trying to be as efficient on a site as you can be and not end up spending more money than it should have taken. First, identify it, but yet spending enough that that if you step up the operation to, doing it more full time or whatever, that you have a chance that you can, prove out the viability of making some money doing it.
Yeah. No, I'd say it's one of those deals where the other thing is, don't forget everything in your mining plan, like reclamation. Make sure you cost that and save the money as you go along.
Definitely.
Testing. Try and think of how can this get screwed up before you put too much money in it.
Exactly.
And eliminate that question. I had a guy I knew that ran a mine in Southern California, and what drove him crazy was the length of time it took to get plans approved, and these are just building permits.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a situation where they were about 6.5 miles from a freeway through the desert. There was an existing trailer park at that freeway, And all they wanted to do, this was before cell phones, they wanted to set up a microwave relay so they could have a phone system at the mine that linked to the hard lines at the freeway through a microwave link, which technologically is simple. And so they put in a building permit for an 8-foot by 8-foot shed at an existing trailer park. 6 months later, they still did not have the building permit to do that. So what they did, they just rented they bought a little travel trailer, rented a space, parked it on the space, and put the antenna on top and the equipment in the trailer. But it's these sorts of things that if you haven't checked water supply, power supply, access, do you have an easement? Maybe there's great access now, but it's over some private land or something.
Right. It's not illegal access.
And nobody's paying attention. You start making money, all of a sudden the landowner says, oh, you're getting rich gold mining there. I want my $10,000 a month to get across my land. You're making $2,000 a month. So always check out all those little details and say, what the hell could possibly go wrong? Because trust me, something will.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, reclamation, if you're bonding a property, is upfront as far as the bond. But as far as the cost of moving material, and let's say you need to rent at the end of the project, what I've done in the past is possibly rent a 850 John Deere dozer and come in for 3 days just to do all the final grading and finish stuff off. You need to account for that rental of that equipment, the time it's going to take,
and
the mobilization, the transportation of the equipment. You need to account for if you've got to move a few thousand yards of material, maybe you got to move 30,000 yards of material. The fact is you can pretty much just say right there, that's going to be $30,000 plus the dozer.
I'll get to it in a second, Mohammed.
Mobilization and equipment. So you have to account for what it's going to cost you before you can get your reclamation bond back.
Okay. Mohammed, in the United States, on federal land, or on state land too, I imagine, in many cases, is it Montana DEQ also? Do they have a bonding requirement?
They are the bonding, actually.
Okay.
As far as whether it's on private land or forest or BLM.
What a bond is a financial instrument. It's money. Now, you can go to like an insurance company and purchase a bond at a discount in some cases, or you can just put up the money. But the purpose of the bond is to provide the money to fix the damage that you've done
that you
during whatever you did, that you walked away from if you did. A lot of these mines go bankrupt. People die, So if you were digging a big hole in the ground and then for whatever reason you're no longer there to fill it in, or you don't have any money to fill it in, the bond provides the money so the government can hire someone to fill in the hole, to put the plants and stuff back on. And that's what it is. It's a financial assurance. In some cases, it makes more sense to purchase it from an insurance company. In other cases, it makes more sense to just put up the cash money yourself. And it's held in a special kind of a bank account where you can't take it out until after the government says you can.
They sign off on it.
Yeah. And so that's what a bond is. It's just an assurance that any damage will be repaired. And somebody, David, you're going to have to convince Eva. She's mad at me. I was rude to her this afternoon. She's saying she's not going to do a tinfoil hat report.
That's not why I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it because I haven't had time to find anything worth talking about.
Okay. Eva says, and we have been gone for 4 days, and there's been places. I mean, we went to Glacier National Park, so there wasn't real good cell phone coverage there and stuff.
Yeah, exactly, Mohammed. It's like a damage deposit. In case you don't do the reclamation work, they can cash that and hire somebody to do what you didn't do.
Yep.
It's kind of the same concept.
That's
exactly.
a very
Yep, that's a
good-
good analogy.
Good analogy
Yep.
there is
Yep.
you know, to fix something that you walk away from, but the owner doesn't want it left undone.
I am not pouting. I just haven't had time to find anything, people. I am old. I am very tired. I walked over 3.5 miles in 2 days. This
Yeah.
is like massive exertion on my part here.
Isn't that a pretty shirt, guys? But yeah, no, we did have a good time. She really enjoyed it up there. We will have a video up in a couple of days. And
I'm not as young as I used to be. I know that most of you do not believe that, okay?
yeah, well, neither am I.
Correct, Terry. You guys are calling it rehab.
Now, Mohammed he agrees with me. He says you have lovely hair for a mature woman. Yep.
Thank you.
I think it's a pretty color. I really do. It's kind of a steel gray, but you know, there's some women that when their hair, you know, when they get old, their hair just it doesn't look very good. I think Eva's looks just fine.
Good.
Absolutely.
By the way, this is Jim's fault. Jim is our food fairy,
Yeah.
and Jim bought over some keto fat cups by Walmart as a treat the other week. And yeah, now I can't stay away from them.
No.
Actually, right now she needs more calories. She's having trouble eating enough calories. So yeah. Does reclamation include removing permitted access roads to the claim? It would depend upon the permit. Some permits require it. Some permits do not. So it would be on a case-by-case basis, but it could certainly include that. And if you had like a culvert to get over a creek or something like that.
Well, I've got that situation Argonaut right now up here on a permit that I'm waiting on. Is we have to fix the road, which we do have to bond it in this case. We have to build a bridge over an existing stream because they don't want us to just make a natural crossing in it, which is fine. It's going to be easy to do, but all of that stuff has to be removed at the point we're actually doing the reclamation. I mean, if we go into a full mining permit and maybe mine it for 10 years, it'll all be in there somewhere at some point. It all has to be removed and cleaned up. But at this point, it's going to be kind of seasonal until we, develop a mine up there or more workings. So they could make us at any point, actually, if we're done kind of doing anything up there, tear it up and clean it up.
I saw a mine in Southern California where in order to screw things up, to limit access and everything, they made the most god-awful mess. And I mean, I'm talking, this was reclamation. Piles 20 feet tall of earth, like a mogul course, practically.
A maze, yeah.
That's like, what the hell? To me, reclamation means putting it back kind of like natural, And
that's true, Chris. Some roads, depending on how far in you're going and things like that, they actually might have you just gate them at the end and leave them so that they are a possible fire road to get in somewhere.
Yeah. I suppose it never hurts to check. Say in the desert, you're not going to have a fire road in general, but there might be fish and game might want an access or something. I mean, it never hurts to at least ask the guy, does any agency maybe need an access to that? And down in southern Arizona could very easily be Border Patrol.
Yeah.
They might want access. Yeah.
But,
oh man, it's a mess down there. Yeah.
Arizona sucks rocks.
See, here are actually under the mining law in that, any roads that were put into these mountains, prior to 1976, Goldstream were supposed to have access to, but in the recent past, in the 1980s and that, they started little by little putting gates here and there and putting boulders on roads. They've even went to the point of ripping some roads up, that they were never supposed to do that, because any road that was prior to 1976 was grandfathered in under all the mining law and stuff. So any roads that were newer, like newer logging roads, they do have the right to tear those out or gate them to keep you out of those newer roads. But any of the old existing roads we are supposed to have access to.
Mhm.
But they kind of make up their own damn rules as they go along. They're not laws. They're their own little book they go by. That's, you know, you have to put the pressure where you need the pressure.
Well, Chris says you can take it to federal court. Yeah, if you got the money. Absolutely. Okay, Douglas.
Sorry about that, but
so anyhow, we had a situation just down here at the January mine where one of the old mines on the road there, they completely obliterated the entrance to it. I mean, they
they love
smoothed it off so
reclamation.
well
Yeah,
that, I mean, I literally lost my footing on the grass because the side hill was so
slow.
And then, you know, 50 yards in, we got a road. You know, just a beautiful road. It's like, what the heck?
Oh yeah, Chris, nowadays they make you build it to whatever spec they want. If they want a 10-ton road and you don't feel you need a 10-ton road, you're building a 10-ton road because they want one.
No.
Yeah.
The government doesn't make you do their job on your dime, do they?
Oh, yes, they do.
In Yuma years ago, when we put in an office in town, we had to extend all the utilities to a certain thing. We had to put in the curbs and curb cuts and all that other stuff, even though we didn't need them. Exactly.
Well,
that'd be nice. Maybe a 12-pack of beer will come in handy at times.
Yeah,
in the
you
right
gotta
place
know
at
the right
time.
if you know the right guys, it might help. Yeah.
Yep. No, it can be a real fight to keep access, because I'll tell you what, the mountains around here, if you ain't got a road, you ain't got a way. Some of these are pretty rough.
You have to kind of you got to really look. Sometimes there's old roads in a lot of this stuff, but you kind of got to figure out how to find them.
Well, they got trees in the
middle.
Well,
a lot of them may have trees, at this point on them too, or laying all the dead ones. That's the worst thing. The new growth isn't usually so bad. It's the old.
I got one mine down there near Montana B where the road has got 12-foot junipers in the middle of it. It's like, okay, that'll be fun to get a permit to cut down.
You can do it. It's not, actually they'll make you use those along the edge of the road to hold the low side.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, some places you almost do need a mule. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, say it's it can be very, very frustrating. At Montana B, at least the old road, which is passable by quad, is within 81 feet high line direct distance from the middle decline opening. So that's an easy run.
Yeah.
For some reason, they don't allow drones in Glacier National Park.
I actually, if you look, I'm not so sure over Forest Service you can fly one. I hate to even go look because I don't really care, but I'm not so sure that like when we go fly some of these little placers and look at from the air, I'm not so sure that's even legal.
Nothing's illegal if you don't get caught.
Well,
or if you got a D after
like my dad always told me you're better off to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission anyway.
It's usually better because the inertia of a bureaucracy is amazing, because nobody wants to take the chance
of saying yes,
of approving something, right, and then something goes wrong.
Right. They won't say yes because
Yeah.
they don't want to take the liability for that yes.
Big corporate with the kettle corn, just trying to get permission out in front of a Walmart or whatever. The store manager could want us, the regional manager could want. Sooner or later, somewhere up that line, is somebody who doesn't want to approve it.
Say no.
Yeah. And it's just so freaking annoying. It's like, how about I don't approve your job? Huh? I don't see where you're necessary.
Yeah.
I think you're quite a risk. I bet you do damage to the corporation. Why don't you just get out of
Exactly, Goldstream.
Yeah.
Catch out twice.
Yeah.
That's true. Now, some of it you're better off to just go in quick, do what you're doing and get out and see what happens.
Well, and the other thing too is if you can make a plausible argument that it was insignificant disturbance.
That's true, and it is.
Then it's like, oh, you want to file a complaint? Well, fine. Are you going to be able to prove it? Because I didn't ask for permission. I said it was insignificant. Is this significant? And again, it's kind of on them to do something. And they hate sticking their necks out. They hate taking a position they can't back away from.
Right. They don't like to get in those arguments.
Yeah, they don't like it. They just want to cow you. In most cases, if you'll say, yeah, another good way to deal with bureaucrats at times is to be very nice to them and like you really appreciate their input and their help. And then when they leave, you can kind of mistook what they said. But I mean,
continue on.
The thing is, it never piss off a bureaucrat unnecessarily. Now there may be times.
Yeah.
Robert Heinlein said when he was in Russia, and this was back in the old Soviet Union days, and he gave advice on how to deal with situations. He said, now if you've got to a bureaucrat, and you got a situation where they will just not, do what you want, and you're willing to take a chance, you get right in their face. Niet kulturny! You're basically calling them an uncultured barbarian asshole. Now, the thing is, that is one of the deepest insults in Russia. Now, here's the thing. Would an underling yell that at a superior? No.
So then they get nervous.
It flicks the little switch in their brain. It's got a good chance. Of course, if it doesn't work, guess what? You're toast.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like everybody in Russia was either on top or on the bottom. There was a pecking order. And I mean, it was like with a pecking order.
Yeah, right.
And so if somebody did this, the natural reaction is, this guy's above me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Says it'll usually work. When it doesn't, you're in the gulag. That's kind of what I look like, Chris. Especially as quite often you can minimize the visual disturbance when nobody's looking. You can disturb something, undisturb it, make it look like it's never been disturbed, and who's the wiser? Right.
Well, I mean, even in a fairly substantial placer operation, you can, when you're done and do the reclamation correctly, it'll look better than it looked before. If you could get the rock buried and get some soil of something back on top and get some vegetative growth, you can actually make it look better than it probably has for 140 years when the guys went through their hand mining.
Or you can make it look like it's been there for 140 years.
Right. No, you can't.
I did some stuff in Tucson, south of there.
Yep.
My video where I'm at how to use hand tools effectively.
Yeah.
I came back 6 months later, and you couldn't tell because you get a couple 2-3 inch rains on there, and the vegetation just grows instantly. And so all the stuff I disturbed has plants growing out of it, and
because you disturbed it. Sometimes because you disturbed it.
And so, I mean, I'm looking at this going, well, I did that.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's been here for decades.
Right.
Wow.
Well, that's what makes you start questioning some of the old workings when you look at them too, because it's like, was it the 1930s or was it 1900 or 1880? A lot, sometimes like up here, you can tell by the lichens on the rocks because it takes about 100 years for those lichens to grow on a rock.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of date it based on, what the total look of the rock is. But it's hard sometimes you look at it, and all of a sudden you go, and then you run a metal detector and you find some regular cut nails or something. And it's like, oh, it's 1930s.
Well, another thing too, this is another good reason to reuse old materials when possible.
Right, because if they checked it, it would still.
I mean, it looks old because it is old. This didn't come from Home Depot.
That's a good idea too. Yeah, dig them in the middle of the road. If the road's on some placer ground or whatever.
Yeah, as long as you get them filled and tamped before anyone sees it.
Who's gonna, I'm not saying it's that accurate, Chris, but you can kind of tell around in this area, if you look at a lot of the workings from the 30s, there's things you won't see. And the lichen kind of tends to be one of them where if it's older, you'll see that them rocks, nothing's been moved into moss in there or whatever. Nothing's been moved for a long enough period of time. In this area, it will help you date. I'm not saying you could take that idea and go somewhere else necessarily either.
Well, what about the idea of taking rocks with lichens and carefully placing them in new disturbed areas so that, these things have lichen on them. They haven't been disturbed for a long time. Okay.
If it's just little test holes in that's pretty easy to cover back up and make it,
Oh, yeah. No, it's and I said I've done some stuff where you're not going to be able to tell I've done anything there unless you had before and after pics.
Some of these drainages to do significant damage, you'd have to have a backhoe because the amount of work the old timers, the mess that they left in some of these drainages, you couldn't do significant disturbance to that.
Well, and here's another question.
It's already been flipped over.
Chris, here's a question for you. If it's already been disturbed, such as a dump, and you move some of the material from the dump, does that count as a disturbance?
Actually, no. According to the old rules, that I think I even have I'll have to dig. I think I have a copy of them. If it's old workings or like an old portal or anything, as long as you're only moving the country rock, you're not hauling ore away like the process. You're not doing any disturbance because it's all old workings. When you start hauling ore away, now you're mining. That's different. But as far as sampling and moving that's not disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
It's old workings. It's country rock. It's already been pulled out.
And if you're underground, it doesn't count.
It doesn't count at all.
Yeah.
Forest Service jurisdiction is trees and flowers.
For a minute there, I thought you said trees and flowers.
Trees and flowers.
Yep. Anyhow, so price of gold has gone up this week.
Today it had a decent day. Went back above 1,800.
What was it down to?
Last
week or so.
Yeah, it was down there pretty 1720 something at one point.
So it was
almost down there
100.
pretty low.
I would be thinking that under the current conditions, it's going to be going up.
Oh yeah.
What's silver at now?
Silver went up, I think, like 24 cents today or something like that.
To
23.60 or something like that.
It's
I don't remember
it's
what
less
the
than
last.
it's been in the
It's silver.
too.
Silver got beat up pretty hard. They knocked a couple dollars out of silver.
Okay.
But I think once it starts going like it did today, it'll start making some jumps.
I'm still of the opinion that it ain't going to get better until it gets worse.
No.
And I just don't see why. Here's the latest one in the weird shit that's not on the shelves. Pipe joint compound. In Tucson, my associate down there was looking for pipe joint compound to redo some plumbing, and Home Depot didn't have any pipe joint compound. None. Zip. Nada. Now, how the hell are you supposed to do plumbing without pipe joint compounds? Some of it you can do with tape, but that's not. You know, I mean, when is the last time you got to a hardware store that had no pipe joint compound? Again, these weird things that are just, why isn't there any of that? So I expect to continue to see this get worse as more and more chaos develops. And, you know, it's very, very interesting times we're living in. And I don't want to say too much on the channel here, but I'm beginning to wonder, how many mistakes can one make accidentally? You know, it's just a question. When someone is extremely consistent at making the wrong call, is it an accident or is it deliberate?
Intentional, yeah.
Yeah. There was a recent interview with Laura Logan by, what's his name? He works for Fox News, the young face guy. But anyhow, and she was basically saying, do you think they're really that stupid? Come on, give me a break. Tucker Carlson, yeah. She's like, really? Do you think they had no idea? Give me a break. And it was an interesting concept. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's certain, rules, the way things are done. And when you break every one of them at once, you got to wonder.
That's true, Jeff. And they tried pulling that on us up here at one point. And I said, the only way, even if it's historic, it can be documented and destroyed as long as it was documented. The other thing that a lot of guys that they don't realize, but if I own the mineral rights on a piece of the ground up here, and the Forest Service said, Jim, that's a historic cabin. We don't want you to remove that cabin or mine where that cabin's at. You can measure out that square footage, base it on the yardage that you're running for dollars per yard. And there's such a thing that's called the takings law. And you guys can look that one up. And it's been used in Alaska. It's been used in the lower 48 here. If they do not want you to take that, then they literally have to write you a check from the U.S. Treasury for the value of the ground that you're not mining. If they want you not to take it. The other thing, there's some in historic stuff, if it's significantly different, like if the walls were significantly different than somewhere else on the drainage or in the next drainage over, like I know of one up here that's a giant, it's actually Chinese walls, but it's about a 350 foot long actual sluice box that they built out of rock. That when they did the drainage up above, they washed it all down through that rock sluice box, basically hydraulic the drainage out, which they literally did it with hand tools. They didn't use hoses and guns. They actually did it with hand tools and washed all the gravel down through the sluice. But they called that historic, and that is it's significant in the aspect that there's very few like it here in Montana. So then it's like off limits. But if there was another one farther up the drainage and one in the drainage over from it and everything else, then it's not significant because there's other places that they did the same technique. Then it's just considered, well, that's how they mined. So they can try to use historic reference on you when you're doing your permitting, but it doesn't actually work very well unless it is something that's very unique.
Well, I know years ago, I think it was Oregon, they were looking at making a law that for any new regulation in Oregon, if it financially harmed you, you could file a takings claim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that law didn't last very long because they figured the first year is like $3 billion worth of claims were filed.
I would absolutely love to get paid to mine a piece of ground that I don't have to mine, but I can get paid. I mean, who wouldn't?
Well, it's not just that.
You know,
For
okay,
example,
you don't want me to mine it, then write me my check.
Well, but it's not just that. It was everything.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna make it harder to build a home. Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna charge you for
Right.
the extra cost to build the home because you changed the rules.
It's a takings law. And
And that I say that didn't last very long because I believe in the first year, or maybe it was 6 months, $3 billion worth of claims were filed against the state of Oregon. Yeah, they figured that's not, but it gives you an idea of just how much damage these regulations do.
well, and you know, I don't usually bring that subject up, but I have with some guys that came to me because they were having problems, and I'm like, well, here's a way to counter the problem you're having. Is okay, you want me to leave that big tree in the on the edge of the placer? Basically you're laying out a cut that you're going to make, and suddenly they want to say, well, we want you to leave that tree. And it's like, well, it's right in my way. How the hell am I going to dig around that thing and leave it? And they do this stuff just kind of to try to disincentivize you to mine it, is what I think. But there's things that you can bring up. Okay, you want me to leave that tree and that square footage over there, then you're going to pay for it. And the minute that subject comes up, they're like, oh, hell, just drop it and put the log over here so we can have the log out of it or something. I mean, you can't let them buffalo you into believing that you can't mine your own mineral ground. Like here in the United States, I mean, if you own those minerals, once you've filed and done everything according to the rules and regulations, those minerals belong to you. And the way the mining law is written, they cannot stop you from mining it. They can make your life hell, but they cannot stop you. Chris, sometimes, yes, you are entitled to lumber for mining, but one of the things that they'll pull, that if you say, well, I want the lumber on this hill here because we're going to set up a sawmill and use it for timbers in the mine, they'll say, oh, no, you can't take those trees, but you can take these trees over 20 miles over here. That's the kind of crap that they try to pull on you.
Yeah.
And actually, under the mining law, yeah, if you claimed that you wanted some timber, you had a right to take some timber from around the mine. But nowadays they try to compensate you by, well, no, you can't. You can have timber, but you can't have this stuff right here because that's too convenient. You can have that stuff down there 20 miles away.
Fine, you pay for it. Haul it to the mine here, and I'll cut it up and use it. Yep.
Well, you got to stand on the fact that as a miner, you do have rights. And there is things that are written in there that are the laws. They're not their makeup regulations that they keep throwing at you like you just walked in out of the blue. Because if you give them the opportunity, they will treat you like a visitor.
Mm-hmm.
And as a claim holder, whether you're in the National Forest or you're on BLM, as a claim holder, you're actually an entity of that. You're an owner. So they can't treat you like a visitor, but they will try to treat you like a visitor, unfortunately. And they'll keep pulling out the visitor rules. Well, you can't pee over there behind that tree, and it's like, whatever.
Yeah, Evie uses the toilet in the
thing. Yeah, I know, but
that comes in so handy at times too.
They keep coming up with stuff they throw at you, and it's like, that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing.
All they're trying to do is
discourage you.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing, is that these people they're preservationists in terms of their mentality.
Sure. I mean, reservations to get in is one thing, but having half the campgrounds closed for no reason at all during tourist season, and having all the shops closed all the stops closed on the shuttle. So what's the point of taking the shuttle? You can't even get off to look at things.
Yeah.
Well, I say that may be a certain amount of personnel issues too, and say this is just part of the. You gum up a machine enough and it stops working. I tried to explain to my daughter the other day, you can take some parts out of your car on random, and sometimes it'll just stop right then. Usually it'll keep running. You take a knob off of this.
Right. Yeah, there's some
but there comes a point
it doesn't work anymore.
It starts running crappy, and then it just dies. And sooner or later, we're going to have serious problems. Hey, Ed, how's it going? And I don't think we're too far away. This is why we like to look at what weird ass things are not on the shelf this week. But things like, if they want to require truck drivers to have a vaccination to go interstate, well, okay, we're already short on truck drivers. What happens if you take, let's just say, another 10% out?
Yep, 10%. It shuts down a lot of things.
I vote, let's just not allow the trucks going to New York and California and see how long that lasts.
That's my opinion. I've always been of the opinion, if you don't like what the guy next door is doing, you can get your checkbook out and you can write him enough money, he will go away.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our world has gotten into where, well, let's just sue or let's complain and let's keep pushing this regulation to the point that you can't operate those parts. Once you take enough parts off, you can't operate anymore.
Well, one thing that's very concerning to me right now is the new rule they just came out that said that if your facility takes Medicare or Medicaid dollars, everyone has to be vaccinated. Well, my wife needs some medical care soon.
Yep.
And it's serious medical care. And it's not going to be done in a doctor's office. So if those hospitals aren't working relatively well, she may die. And that's completely unnecessary. Everyone's a volunteer, Nobody works those things. I know in Tucson a couple of weeks ago, they tried something like that just in the companies. And they had to back down real quick because they found out they couldn't operate Tucson Medical Center or Banner University Medical Center without the people who refused to take a vaccine.
Well, yeah, if the guy with the boiler license quits, or the head janitor, pretty soon, how do you operate?
Well,
the critical people you don't even see.
Volker, that's a good question. Do you think you have a good enough read on the truck drivers in general to give a reasonable estimate that you feel is fairly realistic of how many of them as a percentage will not take the vaccine? They would rather just either park their truck or go intrastate or get another job. That's my question. Right now, hell, $500 sign-up bonus to pump gas. Wow. So I know there's a labor shortage because everywhere I'm looking is looking for labor. And part of that is probably because people were getting paid. Although in this state, they're no longer getting paid the extra stuff. Wow. Volker Bear says he estimates 50% ? Yeah, I think if it's anything over 5% would be serious. Anything over 10% would be catastrophic in terms of reduce the truckers. Volker Bear, the current trucking situation, those companies are pretty much running at their limit right now, aren't they? In other words, they're running the truck drivers just as hard as they can legally. Yeah, I know it's just a suggestion, but in a day it can become a government mandate. And that was my question, is if they were to do it, because I know they supposedly mandated that any facility that takes Medicare or Medicaid, all the employees have to be 100% vaccinated. And I don't think that's going to work. And that's, again, it's the sort of thing that if it was a rational decision that I just disagreed with, somebody would have researched it to say, can we do this? Yeah, I agree, Volca Bear. That's it. I don't think they could take another 10% drop in truck drivers. What's your opinion? What percentage would be essentially catastrophic where now enough essential goods and services are not moving to really start snowballing? I know you're not.
I think it's actually already that
I think it is, yeah.
You know?
Well, did you notice, Bear? Sure, we were on back roads, but we've been on back roads in the past, and there were a whole lot more big rigs on the back roads than there were today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Truth Seekers guessing 30% would quit. Mandatory is not a law. That's correct. But if you get reimbursed by Medicare or Medicaid, then it becomes pretty much
And
effectively.
they can make it a regulation, which is what they want to do.
Yeah.
They don't have to make a law. They can make a regulation.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, Argonaut, is September 1st, everybody, your claims are due, you know.
I don't know
forget.
how fast they get that updated. I think the active ones, you know, for example, you could file your mining fee claims via computer, your mining claim fees, your claim holding fee, and something like that. I paid my 165. It's basically a done deal. I would imagine those would get updated pretty quickly because it's all done by computer. But if it was something like you filed your waiver, your small miner waiver, that may take months. I know they're way behind on stuff. We filed some claims a couple months ago, and I had to actually call and get the provisional claim numbers from the BLM system so that we could file the claim holding fees, because we hadn't got our paperwork back yet. It was a couple of months. So there's big delays there. But I would imagine if someone files by computer, their claim will be updated rapidly. So I'd look at the ones that have re-upped as active. Those are probably pretty solid. It's the ones that have been closed. It may take months before you see that, but it should have a date closed. So if it's not date closed, it hasn't been closed yet, but it may take quite a while.
And if you get to a point, you know, like mid-September, you're asking about a specific claim, you know, something that you think is closed, you can always call BLM and talk to legal at BLM, and they can usually look that up fairly fast. And if it is in a folder somewhere that hasn't gotten completely filed because somebody did refile on it, they can usually give you that information, but it'll take a couple weeks.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Truth Seeker saying that, yeah, with the regulatory requirements, that's also cut out a lot of truck drivers. Terry says truck drivers over here about to do a big blockade of a major city. That would be educational, I think, to people. That would be good. Basel III goes into effect on January 1, 2022.
Yep. That's going to affect the gold and silver prices.
What will Basel II
time.
reaction do, little one? Just a quick.
Well, with any luck, depending on how they end up working out the loopholes, the Basel business should start addressing the problem of paper gold and paper silver, because these companies are going to have physical reserves of a higher fractional amount than they have now.
Okay, so it should drive up the price then, huh? Because they're going to need to actually have physical
but
stuff.
It depends on the loophole
Jeff,
they end up with.
Jeff, mainly that the permits and leases there mainly affected coal and oil for the most part on federal land. They didn't have the same effect as far as
Claim
filing. Now, if you put in for a mining permit,
You're screwed.
yeah, it may definitely affect your mining permit situation.
But you can file a new mining claim. You can go out there and stake a claim, file the paperwork.
Do
That has not been stopped.
assessment work.
Yeah.
Yep.
That has not been stopped, but the paperwork is very slow. I noticed, I mean, when I talked to BLM and Billings, they said that they were many times their normal workload. I forget exactly what it was, but I mean, they were trying to process a lot more claims than they would in a normal year, and it was putting them way behind the curve right there.
Yeah. I would agree with Truth Seeker on that.
Yeah, truth. I think,
The
like Volker is
regulation-
saying, that the supply chains are breaking down. They haven't collapsed yet, but they're all under enormous stress, and it wouldn't take much to break them. And that I agree. I don't think people understand, and I don't think they will until such time as it really hits the news. And believe me, the news is not going to put it out there until it becomes impossible to ignore. Like, as somebody said, blockading a major city. And I don't know if the word blockade makes sense. Just like, okay, we're just not going to go there. I mean, the truck drivers basically just said, okay, next week nobody goes to Los Angeles. You know, what would happen? I don't know, but it'd be pretty dramatic and hard to ignore.
They get noticed. Yeah, they get noticed.
I say, it would get really, even if half the truck drivers refused to go to Los Angeles for a week. Yeah, it would not go unnoticed. Trust me.
A lot of it's is self-imposed. The regulation, though, it's created this scenario too.
Yeah. What is that? About a 25 to 30% increase, Volker Bear? It seems to me last year it was about 270, something like that.
Diesel?
Diesel.
Oh, it might have even been lower than that for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think gasoline is up almost 50%. I know I'm paying about, on this trip here, we were doing like $3.25 to $3.50 a gallon for gasoline, whereas last year it was $2 a gallon.
Yeah.
We got good mileage. You know what the Bago got between here and Highway 83? Just a shade more than 10 miles a gallon.
I told him Buzz was running around 10 miles a gallon. He didn't believe me.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the logs cause a 30% drop in drivers. It's a 30% drop in driver hours. And as such, a truck can't move without a driver yet. They're working on it.
They're working on that one.
But it's going to be years before they can do that. And so in order to drive the trucks, you need drivers, and the drivers have to have so many hours. And with electronic logs, you can't fudge that at all. I know Eva's son used to drive long haul, and it would drive him nuts. He'd be 5 miles from a truck stop, run out hours. He's got to pull the truck over the side of the road. The truck stop was showers and food and everything else. 5 miles in front of him.
I had a friend that
Can't
ran locally here in Montana, and in Montana, the major cities are all about 100 miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had a route that he'd leave in the morning at 5 in the morning and do his route, but he'd run out of his 11 hours or whatever. He'd run out of hours when he got to Townsend, so he parked his truck in Townsend and had his wife drive to Townsend and pick him up every day on his route. And I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. And he said, nope, that's where I run out of my hours, is right there. So that's what, 45 miles down the road.
And when the computer is
so he couldn't even get home.
Yep. When the computer is watching you over your shoulder, you can't bend anything. Another thing, the new infrastructure bill contained a thing where they're talking about tracking everybody's car now.
They would like to, but
yeah, they want to basically charge you per mile driven, which is counterproductive because a gas tax, punishes people like me with a big fuel guzzling car and rewards people with a Kia. You know, they can drive a lot more miles and pay less money than I can. The only reason you want to track everybody's mileage is to track everybody.
Right.
That's the purpose.
It's data.
But you've got to, I mean, I got a 76. Where's the GPS in that?
Mm-mm.
They're going to have to provide it, and probably I'll have to pay for it. Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yep. As I say, the e-logs and stuff like that, while there are legitimate safety reasons to try and keep people from fudging too much, to tighten the rules like they did, it does reduce productivity. Absolutely. Yeah, Jeff, it would drive me crazy. I know that Ryan said one time he was driving down a freeway, there was a car accident, and he was a trained combat medic. Never saw combat, but he was a combat medic. So, of course, he stops the truck and gets out to render aid. He gets back in the truck. 5 minutes later, there's a message on his display. Why is your truck stopped at mile marker such and such on highway such and such?
Yep.
You know, yeah, they're watching you. Big brother is there. Absolutely. It would drive me nuts too. But yeah, there's a lot of other reasons. You don't want me driving a big rig anyhow. I don't focus well enough. Trust me. just be thankful I'm not. Yeah, and they may have to have a lot of other exemptions, but that, again, this is where if they say no vax, no drive cross state lines, it's just another thing that's going to slow shit down. Now, of course, a lot of trucking companies or truck drivers or whatever can mitigate that to some extent by simply not crossing the state line. You know, you take your truck to the state line and exchange it with another truck coming the other way. And there's probably some guy with a vaccine certificate who drives trucks across straight lines.
A friend of mine's a bull hauler, livestock haulers. And they had a bunch of cattle up here that they were moving out in the fall, and they were taking them to some pasture land in Texas. And they had to have 3 guys in the truck in order to make the trip nonstop from here down to somewhere down by Dallas, Fort Worth. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And he said, well, that's the only way we can keep the truck rolling with that livestock, because they have a certain amount of time that livestock can be in a trailer without water.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured it with the 3 guys, they could make it without unloading them somewhere in Oklahoma and having to reload and all that screwing around.
Yeah, rules can have weird consequences. Yep. Yeah, and Ryan tried team driving. He couldn't do it. He couldn't sleep well when somebody else was driving. He just couldn't trust him. But yeah, I haven't heard of that being done yet, Vocabear. But if they were to implement such a rule, you can bet it would be done to some extent somewhere, because the freight needs to roll. People need to eat. Energy has to get there.
And parts and pieces and
absolutely,
building supplies. And
there have been odd yarn shortages too.
Apparently, there's yarn shortages also.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not just regulations; it's executive orders and things like that, where they just come up with stuff nowadays, and it doesn't get proper review or procedure. Where that's what that kind of review is to do, is to have people come up and say, hey, wait a minute, have you thought of this? And without that kind of process, stuff just, that sounds good to me, let's do it. And then it's like, well, holy crap, what happened? You know, exactly what any expert would have told you was going to happen. And it's like Afghanistan. The results were not shocking to anyone given the actions. You know, it's like, yeah, Yeah, if you're
What's
going to do
gonna
that,
happen?
the enemy's going to do this.
Yeah.
Wow, big shock. And so that's the whole idea of having committees think about things for a while, pretty much.
Pretty much.
It was kind of funny, and then this is a paraphrase from that Laura Logan interview with Tucker Carlson. She said, "This stuff, it's not an accident." She was talking about Afghanistan. She says the intelligence services, they would have seen the Taliban preparing for these, and they would have intercepted, communicated, blah blah. None of this is an accident. It's all intentional by whoever's running the United States government. I don't know who they are, but whoever they are, this is deliberate. And that's a good question is, again, I don't think you can make that basic mistakes that consistently. Somebody has to be choosing those actions. And a personal philosophy of mine is if the actions make no sense, the person is either crazy, you're crazy, they're working on a different fact set than you are, or they have a different motivation than you do, And quite often it's the last one. They're not crazy. They understand reality roughly the same way you do. They just have a different goal in mind, and the goal makes no sense to you. It's like when I was working at Goldfields, and I was trying to explain how they could do it more efficiently, and it got me in trouble.
Yeah.
And then some guy took me aside. I said, look, they've got 30, 40% extra capacity. They know that. If corporate tells them they've suddenly got to come up with 10% more production, but they got no higher budget, they can do it. As long as the numbers they're producing right now make corporate happy, they're happy.
Mm-hmm.
You say, you're rocking the boat because you don't understand the system.
Right. I'm not looking at the whole picture.
Yep. I agree. I agree, truth seeker. There comes a point where the system is so stressed and people are so without that they have to just cave. Yeah. Yeah, it'll work for you, Ed. Absolutely. But then you don't produce anything of critical value anyhow at this point. You're just, well, I won't tell you what Ed does. I haven't seen him sell anything in the last 5 years that everyone couldn't live without if they wanted to. He does not sell necessities, but he's a great guy.
Oh, boy.
Yes, stupidity can cause a lot of damage. I look at the consistency. Even a stopwatch is right twice a day. 100% massive failure is a plan. Okay? Because at least sometime they'd randomly pick a reasonable thing. And it's never a bad idea. It's always the worst idea. And that, to some extent, Ed, I think things like mask mandates and stuff are. I hear that in Australia, the Australian police are beating more Australians than the Taliban is beating Afghanis. That was a statistic somebody quoted today. I don't know if it's correct or not, but if true, that gives you an idea just how whack everything is.
It's whack.
Yeah. But anyhow, I look at consistency, and somebody who's just an idiot is going to be randomly all over the board. When you're constantly here, it's like, okay, he wants here. That's it.
Yeah, they want trouble.
And so I can think of very good reasons why certain people on this planet would like chaos in the United States. One thing I thought, purely as a thought experiment, everyone, if somebody wanted the United States to be completely absorbed with itself and unable to interfere with anything else on the planet, what better way than to suddenly provide the evidence that Donald Trump was actually the person elected president, now that there's no constitutional way to affect that change? That would pretty much get everyone going, hey, but what? I don't care. Yeah, I think that'd be a great way to stalemate the United States. Yep. St. Greta Asperger, yeah. I tell you what, it's very interesting times we live in. But does anyone have a mining question?
Found out what happened to Cuomo's dog that he allegedly abandoned at the mansion when he left.
That would be, yeah. Here, New Zealand is changing the government economic plan because of one COVID. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they locked down the whole damn country because of one COVID case. So what happens? Now they got 21 COVID cases. Wow, these lockdowns work just fantastically. Did you also notice, remember here, testing, due diligence? Where's the good data?
Well,
where is the data on masks, on lockdowns, on all this other stuff? Where's the data?
Well, we don't have a media that will dig for that data and pull it out.
Nobody is gathering the data.
They don't want to.
Yeah, there's a few of them. Robert Sammy says, Hegelian dialectic. What does that mean, little one? You and Chris know.
Dialectic. I will try to find a way to explain it to you very shortly in words of one syllable.
That would be beneficial. She's working on it. That's a bad sign. But anyhow, yeah. Again, these irrational responses.
All right. Now here you go. The Hegelian dialectic is the ridiculous idea, and I'm quoting somebody here, that constant conflict and continual merging of opposite ideologies, as established by extreme right or left belief systems, will lead spiritual mankind into final perfection.
Okay. I disagree. There was a big shipment of them up here at the Ace Hardware, Ed. You might check your Ace Hardware. Canning jar lids. Yep, we got a bunch.
I stocked up.
We need to get a bunch of meat and stock more meat. Make some meat mix up for Eva. But some of that, I agree. Some of it, as Ed was saying, they're pushing to see how far they can push, when they're going to get pushback.
Yep.
What kind of pushback they're going to get. Actually, Trevor, I would agree the data exists to some extent, but to a great extent, it has never been gathered. For example, how many cases in August of last year, the official number was 200,000 or roughly in the United States, deaths. However, the CDC said it was less than 9,000 were caused solely by the you-know-what. So you have roughly 190,000, which we don't know for sure what actually caused. In other words, what the proportion of causation was. And I haven't seen anyone put that out, say diabetes causes this much when, that sort of thing. It's that kind of granularity of the data that is being avoided right now.
Dr. Jill's press secretary has come out fighting.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Jill's press secretary is demanding an apology from Fox News for saying she failed the country by letting Joe run for office.
Yeah.
Oh, the horrors. Yeah, well, Dr. Jill better get her ass together trying to keep Biden from becoming the laughing stock of the country forever. The worst ever. Even Benedict Arnold, stuff like that.
To a certain extent, Jeff, yes, it will.
Yeah.
Especially placer material with, decent gold in it. I even tried a 5-gallon pail with a copper airline in it and just put air, from the air compressor, valved it, and just put air and bubble it. And believe it or not, it will settle the gold and the heavies to the bottom of the pail, and you can pretty much scoop off everything else. And we tried panning it at different levels in the pail, and the gold made it to the bottom.
Yeah.
Into the bottom material.
And say stirring is just a form of liquefaction.
Right.
And if you can liquefy it without stirring it back up again,
carrying it,
it will settle back down. Pretty much however you do that. The thing is to try and avoid the upwellings as part of the stirring process. That's what you do in a pan. You just shake it. And even with microfine gold in a fine matrix, I was doing some concentrates from Ryan's ore, and I forgot exactly what the number, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but something like 10 seconds of agitation got most of the gold out of the upper 30% in the pan, just that quick. And this stuff was,
you proved it in
gold.
that black poison thing even.
Yeah.
I mean, it was you're using the same concept.
Yep.
Just by dumping it off, agitated enough to dump off and agitated enough to dump off.
Yes. A lode mine can be complicated depending upon how much permitting you need to do what it is you want. This is there's a lot of issues there. If he wants some help on that, he could get onto a live stream someday when he has enough experience to have some good questions. We'll see if we can give him some good answers. Yep. Jeff, to a certain extent, the air bubbles will try to, but depending upon a few other issues, it may not be too significant. Number one is the size of the gold, too. Yeah. Yeah, we have real problems. Absolutely, Ed. I don't know what's going on, Roberts. I haven't heard anything, but I mean, just the news is pretty special at the moment. Jim, you don't have any placers. You're going to be working this season, do you?
Well, my partner just bought 160 acres of placer up in a drainage here north of here, and we may try to get in there and do a few test holes. They had the closing, I don't know, sometime this week he closes on it. And I was up there actually over the weekend. I drove up there and wandered around a little more trying to get a picture of what I want to plan out. So I got a lot of planning before I really get to digging holes, but we could possibly be digging some test holes anyway and hopefully able to film some of that.
3 placer claims at 9,700 feet. Well, it would depend on the grade. The creek is not necessarily indicative of the amount of sediment to each side of the creek that may have gold in it also. So you would need to do some more sampling. But I don't see any reason why it couldn't work, but you'd have to do a lot of sampling to have a good idea. Again, there's due diligence here. Test. A lot of test holes.
Well, there's a lot of operating stuff recently in Colorado, though. There's a lot of mining going on, and trying to get back into operation again. So I know Colorado's restrictive, but part of it, the history of Colorado was mining too.
Yeah. And so the nice thing about placer is it's a lot quicker to get, a lot easier to get the gold
to a
out
value.
generally.
Yeah, get to a value.
Than hard rock. Hard rock usually takes a lot more time. By the way, Ed, you're right. I love Eva, not you. Sorry. I like you. You're a nice guy, you old curmudgeon. Let's see. Yeah, you never know, Truth Seeker. Over here, just to the east of us in Confederate Gulch, which is fairly high up, what were some of the richest stuff they were getting there?
Oh man, it was just insane.
5 ounces per pan or some god awful thing.
Carpenter Bar over here to the west too was like that. That when they found it originally, the gravel bars, yeah, it was 5 ounces to the pan. A full size gold pan. But yeah, they were making $100 to the gold pan or more, and it was so rich that the guys who owned the placers literally hired guards 24 hours a day to make sure nobody was stealing gold.
Good luck on that.
Yeah, well, they did it.
Oh, there was some theft going on. You can bet that.
Well, I'm sure. Well, the guards were probably carrying it off. I mean,
oh yeah, yeah. When you get really rich gold like that, I mean, there's always somebody trying to, like drilling holes in old timbers being shipped and sticking gold in there and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, there was a lot of mines here that the history says, they figured they got this much gold, in production, but then they figured, 30% more went out in the lunch buckets and the pockets. All the guys
in their stomachs.
Yeah. Guys are working there.
Talk about penning some good shit. Same thing with the diamond mines. I mean, they have you walk through X-rays.
Yeah.
To
make sure you're not
carrying. Make sure you're not taking anything. Yep. Absolutely. I agree. It probably, is somewhat indicative, but it's not directly related.
No.
And it's certainly not related to the grade of the placer. And it's the combined grade times tons that, gives you your gold content. I'd much rather have high grade, low tonnage than high tonnage, low grade.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have not, Robert, and I don't think you have.
We've used resistivity. As a matter of fact, on this copper mine, that'll be one of the things we'll be doing, as well as more magnetics on the ground.
Yeah.
Magnetometers type stuff. There's another test that they brought up the other day that they want to do, and I've never heard of it. Something newer that they got. It's something like resistivity, but they use both. They use resistivity,
IP, and polarity.
IP, but you're in polarity, but it's a combination test of the two, so they can actually use the one data against the other one somehow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of placers even here that are dry drainages. They worked, the Chinese or the white guys, whoever, work to bring water around the mountain or through the mountain. I can show you places where they actually tunneled through the mountain to bring water from one side of the mountain to the other.
Yeah.
There's some crazy stuff that they did to be able to mine it using water, because that's the only excavation they had. Nowadays, some of that you could probably figure out a way with pumping equipment nowadays. I mean, we can pump water 5 miles in a aluminum pipeline.
Frequency response study?
That might be. They had something kind of new they were dreaming up there or going to try. Right, that's the other thing, Goldstream, is you have to imagine what happened in the drainage that would have segregated that gold in the drainage. And just because I can show you some. As a matter of fact, one of the drainages we were on, I asked an old timer why there was all the ditches up on the side hills that went along there, because there's no water. And he said, well, that's an interesting point, but he said in 1935, they had an earthquake up there and all the water changed. And I'm like, oh, that would answer it. But they actually, there was ditches and it's like there's no water. How did they do it? And he said, well, there used to be a lot of water, but the earthquake shut that fault line or whatever off, and now there's no water.
Let's see. Just writing down a list of stuff I need to do tomorrow because I'm getting tired of it.
Oh, keep making notes so you don't forget.
Oh, I'm terrible now.
I am too.
I hate it when you take off and you forgot the list. Yeah, that's why I'll usually stick it in here. While I'm getting ready to go, I said, put the list in there. If I think of something else, I'll take it out and put it on. Otherwise, I'll be head down the road. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Well, so you could, have a good placer and not enough water to wash it. And that's very possible.
Ooh.
And as far as mining it, if it's not that much water coming down the drainage, it may not be an issue as far as your permitting in that. It wouldn't be a fishery at that elevation with not very much water or anything.
Yeah, I'd say you never know what was going on in the past. Especially, a gold placer can be there for tens of thousands of years and still be a placer as opposed to, re-cementing into hard rock.
Correct.
So, you've got glaciation and all kinds of stuff that kind of happened in the meantime. Oh, darn that fly. But, let's see I think along the Pacific coast there, the mountains are growing at the rate of, I don't know, some in the neighborhood of several millimeters a year. So 10,000 years times 2 millimeters. 20,000 millimeters. 20 meters in 10,000 years. So that's not real fast, but things happen.
Oh, yeah.
No,
that's part of the events that created that gold too. Like we were talking one other night, is the veining that literally crossed that valley. As that valley washed out, that veining washed out. So there's always a chance of the hard rock still existing on one or both sides of the drainage, depending on where the gold or, the fault line or whatever created the anomaly for the gold, where it went. So you could have a placer that's been laying there for, eons of time.
Yeah, Truth Seeker, they can grow pretty dramatically. As a matter of fact, I think I'm probably low on that. Like the Cascadia subduction zone currently has like 20 feet or more of strain built up in it. The last big earthquake dropped the land 5 feet when the strain went away temporarily. And so, these mountains are going up. They're being worn down. They're shifting. They've got what they call terrains, i.e. large clumps of rock that they think came basically from Baja California or sitting up there in Alaska. Yeah, stuff moves around a lot over geologic time. The San Andreas Fault, I believe, moves, 10 centimeters a year? Something like that. Since the last earthquake in 18 something or other, it's put in 27 feet of strain is built up. That's just since the last earthquake.
It's, and there very well could be placers on half of these mountainsides around here that have never been found.
Well, congratulations, Roberts. That's great. His grandma's coming home from rehab after having a broken hip.
Ooh.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Wow.
That's rough at that age.
Yeah, at that age, that's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Very good.
101.
Good grief. She's old enough to be my grandma.
Yeah, barely. I mean, you know, if you get 20, 30-year generations in there, yeah. Hell, I got grandkids that are 20 years old plus. So, yeah, anytime you see mountains, they've been pushed up. You take a look at the mountains back east, they're a lot more gentle. That's because they've been worn down a lot more than the ones here. That's because these ones are being pushed up more rapidly.
Yeah, that's
Okay, Trevor says 30 to 50 millimeter movement annually on the San Andreas. So that would be 3 to 5 centimeters, according to him. It adds up.
Yeah.
Yep.
5 centimeters means every 6 years it's moved a foot.
Yep. So, I'd say it's things happen, and then you have sudden cataclysmic events. Things like, you know, the Yellowstone supervolcano, the gosh, what was it? Glacial Lake? Was it Missoula?
yeah, down here. Yeah.
Yeah, that broke through the ice dam and
Well,
made the cratered scablands of
yep.
Washington. Yeah, I mean, you can go through Grand Coulee in that area there, and you can see cliffs 400 feet high that were made in a month because of the huge amount of water that flowed through there. Big giant lake was backed up behind glaciers last ice age. And then as the glaciers recede, you get more water, less glacier. Eventually, the water tops the glacier and just cuts right through it. And it was putting out water many times the flow rate of the Amazon River. And it did some amazing things in a very short time. New fishers make new gold, huh? Or new mine labs. Yep. I knew a guy, I ran into him once down south of Arivaca. There was a particular area, and he said there was good nuggets there. And every time someone would come out with a better detector that would see deeper, he'd get one, come to the same area and just scan it again, get some more.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep trying different detectors and
Yeah. Oh. Well,
yeah. Well,
how's the weather looking for you guys, Chris, over there? We've gotten rain here. We had, was it pretty good rain last week, wasn't it? About a week ago?
yeah.
We got another good soaking rain this week. I think we're out of danger here. How's it looking where you're at, Chris? Because I know you guys are still fighting the fires. But what I thought was funny, we were in the park, and it says fire danger is very high. It's like it's raining. It's been raining all day. You know,
The guy who changes the sign wasn't there that day.
I think they're just like, screw it. You know, we're just going to leave it there for a couple of weeks.
They put a September 1st date, and then they'll adjust.
Yeah.
They'll leave it, even though we've had.
That sucks, Chris. Well, we wish you all the best.
Yeah.
You and yours.
Hopefully you get some rain or something here.
Yeah. I'm pretty tired myself.
Yeah. Well, it's been a
Been a long weekend.
Plus, we didn't have near the mining stuff tonight, so we'll try to do better next week.
Oh, I'm trying. I wish I'd had some good stuff for you.
Well, we
All I've
will.
got
Burnt crucible.
is a burnt crucible. And
Some
crap.
crap. Some crap.
Yeah, it's theoretically I can remelt
we'll
it.
have massive triumphs.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Yeah.
Well, we still got to go to that prospecting store. I'm going to be tumbling rocks.
At least Alberta seems to be fine. Goldstream says couldn't start a forest fire here with gasoline right now.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where we got this rain from, wasn't it? Up north there.
I don't know.
I think so. It come down.
BC's still on fire, huh? That's kind of weird. Alberta's inland quite a ways. BC's right on the coast. Wow. Weather's weird, man. Yeah. I don't know.
We got fires here yet too. It didn't all get washed out.
No, it's pretty much igneous plug. Roberts.
Yeah, it's a reverse volcano.
Yeah, it's the center of an old volcano.
Right, it's
yeah.
the plug.
Yep. Oh. That's fine, Kodak. Or Kodoak or what? Kodak?
That's his ham radio handle.
Whatever. I'll call you Kodak. It's easier for me. But yeah, and that works. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's a cool idea. I've been watching. What's his name down here in Idaho?
Oh,
I can't think.
Prospector Trip.
Yeah, Trip. Trip's been doing some, and I just love it. I try to get on all of his videos because it's just in comment because it's a lot of fun. You know, he's getting some gold. That's what's really neat about it.
Well, if we never get all the stuff calculated here, the same system would probably work just fine for electronics with the Eco Goldex and direct electrowinning and then smelting.
Yep, I think that'd work really, really well.
But we shall see. I will try not to fail y'all. We'll come up with something. We may have to put a resin step in there first. But with Chris helping me out, I can probably manage it. I know the theory in general. It's just all the nitpicky little details that get annoying. Anyone else got a mining question of any kind? Yeah, that's true. It'd be great in winter, Goldstream. I know Ken over in New York could do that because he's got a fencing company, and so during the winter it's kind of slow. Although I don't know, for all I know, he's just going gangbusters. He does a real good job in terms of he does a good fence. It looks good and it stays looking good because he does what it takes to make it stay there, which in many cases was a little over 2 feet deep holes with a bell bottom so that the frost heave wouldn't push them up.
That's what we had to do in Minnesota.
Yeah. Look for a state that requires recycling of old electronics and then go to waste disposal companies because they have trouble getting rid of them.
Yep.
You know? Roberts, he has used some drones before. I have not to this stage.
I like the idea of a drone for identifying the drainage, how everything lays and where the curves and stuff might be. The idea of using a drone can really give you a good overview of
The lay of the
land so that you can start to predict, where the water made turns in its course. And then you can start to predict where you might put, if you did a test hole, there's a good chance you'd find some gold. So the use of drones has been a kind of a huge, neat deal because a lot of times Google Maps you can't get unless you buy Google Earth. Then you can get closer pictures. But to even go on Google Earth and zoom in on a drainage, you can get a pretty good layout of it, but you really can't get the detail that you can with a drone. So overflying, some of these little drainages and stuff and looking at them and then being able to create a better map from that.
Well, I think most of these modern drones, Goldstream, have a vertical takeoff thing where you use GPS to go straight up. So you wouldn't need too big a clearing to get a safe launch. But yeah, I can understand.
Yep.
You wouldn't want me flying your drone, not if it was worth anything.
But yeah, and you can identify the old benches or possibly maybe even a river channel that was up higher on a bench. That is something that unless you walked every damn little piece of ground up there, you would not. And sometimes if even walking it, you can't make heads or tails of it. But by looking visually from a drone, from a top view down, you can pick out, some interesting things that are worth looking at.
Goldstream, have you seen all the geological sensors you can buy for a drone now? No, I haven't. You could elucidate if you wish. Yeah, Robertson, and if it's having trouble healing, they can also induce a current with some electromagnets in the bone, and it'll heal faster. They don't do it normally because it's kind of expensive, but it really does work. It's not hype or whatever. It's standard medical science at this point. But they want to save money. You know how it is. Oh. Okay, Goldstream. I'm about to fade out. LiDAR, yep.
Oh yeah, LiDAR is really a cool one.
Yeah,
I know a lot of you guys were on here the other night when I was talking about the new iPhone 12 with the LiDAR on the phone. Oh my gosh, we used that underground up on a hard rock mine here a couple weeks ago. And that thing mapped out that mine underground with no cell phone service or anything. I couldn't believe it worked. And not only that, it did a full 3-dimensional picture and mapping of the portal all through the tunnel and everything. And we could go back and do a virtual tour walking through the mine with the phone, looking at all the detail and, anywhere there was fracturing or a vein. It was mind-blowing, the amount of power that darn phone had.
Yeah, David, I'm feeling that way. If Jim wants to stay up and keep talking to y'all.
I'm about ready to call it a day too, guys.
I'm exhausted. I got up at, I don't know, 7 o'clock, 7:30, something like that this morning, and driven several hundred miles, and etc. I got a big day tomorrow, though. Try and pour the first button.
Yeah, there's no big LiDAR, but there is areas like out here that they did do flyover LiDAR. Like I know Powell County west of here, they did flyover LiDAR. And I actually just recently referenced some LiDAR just to see. And you could see all the old water ditches. You can see portals and mine dumps that you wouldn't see in the timber.
Sure.
So LiDAR's got some really, really cool advantages to looking for things that with brush cover and ground cover like we have here, you can't identify. But with the LiDAR, that's all you see. The trees disappear.
Yeah, think coastal Washington and Oregon.
Yeah, well, that'd even be worse. Anything in a rainforest type,
Oh yeah, and the ground cover. I mean, up there in Washington, they had blackberry brambles that ate barns.
Yeah.
I mean, I have literally seen the blackberries coming out of the second story of barns.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Thanks, David, for being here. Chris, thank you.
Oh, well, folks, I'm afraid we're going to have to call it a little early tonight. because both of us are tired. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, and it's been a weekend, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, nothing's cheap. Well, poverty's cheap.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Yeah. Hey,
You
John.
betcha.
Well, we'll try to do this every Monday. If you can be here, great. Bring
Yeah.
your questions.
Okay. We'll do our best. I'll do my best to get a button for you next week. We'll see. Plus, I gotta get
Thanks,
the video
Volker.
up of Glacier. It was very pretty. Eva had a really good time, which was great, and met some interesting people in the campsite next to us. But they were kind of free spirits, you might call it, in terms of this guy's an old geezer that just backpacks around and stuff. And he had quite a few stories.
Oh boy.
I'm not sure what you mean, Mr. Virtue, but you're welcome. I'm just doing what I can do.
Well, thanks,
Good night,
Goldstream.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here again, and we'll try to do a better show next week. Hopefully, Keith's going to have some good results.
I hope so. I'm getting really tired. I was so hopeful to get a button, and it's like I looked in the crucible, and it's like it's getting lumpy. Why is it getting lumpy? You know, it's because the flux was draining out. Oh man. Argonaut. We had a crucible failure, and the hole in the bottom here was when I beat out the stuff that was solidified inside it. And there is still steel wool undigested in the flux. So I have a few things to address that, and we will see what transpires. Hopefully by next week you'll have already seen the video of my amazing success. Wouldn't bet the farm on it though. Okay. Yeah, it was really. Oh, and that doesn't show you the bottom of the kiln also got kind of dissolved by the slag. So,
I can give you some hints, John. I'll give you some hints in Minnesota for next week.
Yeah.
I'll write a few spots down that I know they found placer gold in Minnesota.
Yeah.
There's actually some interesting history in Minnesota, believe it or not. But a lot of it was mainly the hard rock up there, up north, along the Iron Range.
Well, thanks for showing up, guys. Goldstream, Miner 49er, Argonaut, Robert, Terry. I mean, recognize a lot of your names here. I hope you all have a good time doing this, because we sure do.
Yeah.
And 4K reality. You just got here. Well, shucks. I mean, we start at 6 o'clock every
6
Monday.
o'clock Mountain.
Now, right now, here, it is 9 o'clock. So 3 hours before this, every Monday night, is where you can get hold. Now, write down your questions, though, because questions make it go great. But as I just that's when we start. We'll usually start with a synopsis of what happened in the week and everything, and then as soon as questions come in, it just goes wherever it goes. And I'm sorry, 4K reality.
Yeah, well,
but I'm exhausted right now.
You can go back and watch the first part on rerun.
Yeah, you can rerun it. But yeah, it's a little rough. Do you have any quick questions that you need an answer to? If you don't, then we'll just have to call it a night. But if you got a question, yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right, Roberts. You have shredded hard drives.
Ooh.
Yeah, Eco Goldex might do a pretty good job of recovering the precious metals from that. But I have yet to successfully recover the gold from the solution. So hopefully next week I'll have some answers from you. Yeah, to get out the gold, I think the Eco Goldex will work fine. How you get it out of the Eco Goldex is a problem that I'm working on refining the answer to. So yeah, by next week, hopefully I'll have some, at least some numbers for that. I don't know if I'll have a good answer at that point, but at least I'll have some good numbers.
Well, Goldstream, at least you have an excuse. That's about as good as it gets.
You betcha. But yeah, 4K, do have a non-toxic, non-hazardous solution. I mean, it's the sort of thing that is pretty easy to deal with. It's not terribly expensive. And I'm working now on just getting the gold back out of the solution. Actually, Robert, sometimes I do.
Not today, though.
Yeah, I didn't today because I was driving, and that would have been a bad time for a nap. We didn't get Helen here until 2 hours before live stream started. Yeah, John, I agree. It's the chips and contacts. But oh well.
Agreed, Goldstream. Totally agree.
Okay. Do you have a web store? No, I do not. I do not make the Eco Goldex. It's out of Canada. I think you can just Google Eco, ECO, space GOLDEX. Guy's name is John. Seems reasonably knowledgeable, and he's always delivered what he said when he said. Shipping sucks, though. It's really expensive. But when I get a solution on how to get it out, then it is definitely reasonable.
You bet.
Okay.
That's what we're here for. Try to help everybody. And
yeah. All righty. Well, everybody, I'm gonna go to sleep here. I think I'm gonna have to make a little something to eat first, though.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Good night. Happy prospecting, and keep it safe out there.